The whole story began with physical training on a vast sports field. The mysterious young man was closely watching the girls running around the playground. There was an incredible number of young and attractive girls there. These young ladies showed prowess in various sports, such as volleyball. The observer believed that these girls were truly outstanding and continued to closely monitor them. One of the students approached her teacher, Tong, to share her concerns. It turned out that the concerned girl wanted to complain about the guy who had been staring at the students for a long time. The teacher was seriously outraged by this, since she assumed that it could be a pervert who enjoyed watching girls during training. Suddenly, something unexpected happened, and the student started screaming in the direction of Tong, reporting something terrible. It turned out that the student named Yusi had lost consciousness and stopped moving completely. The brave teacher immediately rushed to Yusi to provide first aid. Apparently, the girl had sunstroke, and when her name was called, she did not react, as she was unconscious. The concerned teacher ordered all the girls to move away so as not to disrupt the air circulation, as she was about to perform artificial respiration. While performing chest compressions, she begged Yusi to remain conscious because she still had her whole life ahead of her, and she was very young. Anxious, Tong continued to massage her heart, hoping for a positive result. She then began artificial respiration, trying to bring the girl back to consciousness. Unfortunately, despite all efforts, this did not lead to positive results, and Yusi remained unconscious, while Yusi did not show any reaction, remaining in a hopeless state. At that moment, the teacher decided to seek help from other students so that they could help take Yusi to the doctor. A stranger joined the unexpected story and asked the students to calm down. The teacher instantly recognized him because this guy had just been spying on her students, and she sternly yelled at him, demanding to stay away from the girls. But this turned out to be not such a simple guy, and he asked the teacher to speak more quietly. After all, the student could have fainted precisely because of a heart attack. This was due to the fact that when running, the girl had extremely clumsy movements. What happened during training could really pose a danger to her life. The worried teacher tirelessly assured that Yusi would be fine and not to worry. Then she decided to find out from the stranger why she should trust him, although he warned about the danger to life. At this time, another student approached, who remembered that Yuxi had previously told her how she had lost consciousness and was taken to the hospital with high blood pressure, almost died on the way, and the girl must have had medicine in her pocket. Hoping to find it, Tong instantly looked into the girl's pocket, and indeed, a bottle of medicine was found there. But, unfortunately, it turned out to be empty, because the medicine and the bottle itself was surprisingly light, since inside there was some extremely rare medicine. The guy easily determined that the girl had indeed fainted due to a heart attack, and this smell was special. This scent belonged to a traditional Chinese medicine for heart care, and the one who prescribed it is an expert. Listening to all these details, the teacher still tried to understand who this guy was. As if nothing had happened, he introduced himself, saying that he was studying Chinese medicine, and his name was Shuniko Yuire. Continuing to worry about her student, the woman wanted to know if there were other ways to wake up the girl. The only way out in this situation was artificial respiration and chest massage. Tong immediately objected as she had just performed artificial respiration and massage, but there was no effect, and he saw it himself, and yet the girl fainted due to a heart attack, which is unusual for an ordinary person, as strong lungs are needed to properly performing artificial respiration. Her rescue is only possible with the participation of Shuniko Yuire, but he must do this in 10 minutes, otherwise the student will be in danger. This information really did not bring joy to the teacher, but there was simply no other choice. She then asked the doctor to help, claiming that saving the student's life and supporting teacher Tong rested on his shoulders as his professional responsibility. The concerned teacher continued to monitor what was happening and wondered what this guy's intentions might be. She may have been overthinking things, but he could show up here as one of the school doctors, and of course, Yusi's safety would be in jeopardy, which could bring trouble to the school. Turning to her students, Tong asked them to turn away so as not to see what would happen next. But the woman immediately announced that Shuniko Yuire could begin the procedure while no one was looking. Then the doctor remembered the saying that before the doctor there is no difference between a man and a woman, because his mission is to save people. There is no point in feeling rushed, as delay may prove unfavorable, and saving someone's life cannot be delayed. Such a request only increased Tong's anxiety, and she noted that 9 minutes had already passed. Therefore, it was necessary to stop talking and hurry to escape. Suddenly, the hero began to do something unexpected that the woman could not foresee. She immediately ordered him to stop this action, since she did not understand what he was planning. As it turned out, the guy was deliberately taking off his bra, while the physical education teacher should have known basic things, but she didn't even know that. Then it occurred to her that when rescuing a patient, it was important to make sure that nothing was blocking access to the chest, which was a basic rule. Focusing his gaze on the bra, the guy discovered something extraordinary. But as it turned out, his attention was attracted by the color pink and extremely beautiful. Very annoyed, the teacher exclaimed that she needed to be more serious and hurry up to save the student because there were only 30 seconds left. 30 seconds should have been enough since he was going to demonstrate his unique rescue method, so she should have waited a little longer. As a physical education teacher, she was too nervous in critical situations, which made it difficult for her to maintain her composure. But in this case, Tong still agreed to wait. Turning her head, she saw something very curious that she had never seen before. And, exclaiming, she demanded that Shuniko Yuire hurry up to save the student and stop performing acrobatic stunts. This position was necessary for medical intervention that could actually save this girl. His touch was intended to help this student to give her life back. Just one touch, and Yusi began to show signs of life. Surprised by such skills, the teacher exclaimed that the girl seemed to have finally responded. The determined guy realized that his time had come. Now he transfers his true energy into her to bring her to her senses. This technique involved mouth-to-mouth artificial respiration, which in appearance resembled a student's kiss. And he did it so skillfully, as if he had been training for years. This really embarrassed the experienced trainer, but she continued to monitor and control the process. Looking around, she was convinced that none of the students were following the procedure. She soon began to think how lucky it was that no one except Yusi saw her in this state, otherwise her reputation might have suffered. Meanwhile, Shuniko Yuire announced that the procedure was completed and he was freed. After another 2 minutes, the girl had to come to her senses and they had to wait. With a sad look, Tong continued to look at her student, feeling compassion for her. Fortunately, Yusi gradually began to come to her senses and make sounds. Shuniko Yuire at the time reported that she had regained consciousness and he left first, warning that if there was trouble, he would be in the director's office. Immediately, Tong wondered what this guy would be doing in the principal's office, considering that the school hospital is under the management of President Chu, and he is apparently a new doctor. And this doctor, invited by President Chu himself, is not ordinary and is apparently the same age as Tong. Suddenly, the hero decided to ask the coach a question. It turned out that Shuniko Yuire wanted to know where the director's office was. In anticipation of a completely different question, the woman replied that after this building, he had to walk 1 kilometer east to get to the director's office. And however, he had no idea where exactly the director's office was, and so she wanted to ask if he personally knew school director. Suddenly, a student ran up and shouted to teacher Tong that Yushi had finally woken up. The worried teacher tried to find out from the student how she was feeling and told all the other students that they could now rest and she herself would take care of Yusi. Fortunately, the girl's condition was somewhat better, and it was all due to her old illness, and she did not expect the symptoms to appear so often recently. If this is indeed the case, then the girl may be in danger and should avoid such intense physical exercise in the future, as it is indeed dangerous to her life. Yusi also told the teacher that she had a strange dream where a man was treating her. Noticing her clothes, the girl also realized that something was missing. At that moment, it became clear to her that her bra had somehow disappeared and was nowhere to be found. Tong immediately realized that Shuniko Yuire probably put the bra in her pocket on purpose, and it was her fault that she ignored his actions. Together they went to the hospital so that the girl could rest and recover there. In case she faints next time, Tong will offer to help remove the bra to avoid pressure on the chest, and he will give it to one of her friends. And at the moment, she unfortunately forgot who she gave the bra to, but will figure it out later. The teacher was aware that the doctor recommended that she immediately head to the principal's office, and she needed to hurry to return Yusi's bra. Otherwise, the woman would apparently get into trouble. Sometime later, events unfolded not far from the director's office. Walking down the corridor, the hero thought that he had traveled 1 kilometer to get here, and it was really worth it to work at the best university in China. Suddenly, the guy noticed a sign nearby that said that this was the director's office. Knocking on the door and entering, the hero immediately apologized for disturbing him. After asking if Chu Hongshin was the director, he received confirmation from the woman. The man in the office showed obvious resentment towards Shuniko Yuire, which was clear at first glance. Watching the director, Shuniko Yuire realized that she looked truly attractive. With her perfect physique and cool expression, she was more suited to the role of a model than a director. The unknown person asked the hero if his name was actually Shuniko Yuire. He later introduced himself as Long Tengyu and turned out to be Shin's friend. In addition, he served as general manager of Dragon Group. This was because Long Tengyu considered himself an authority in the world of trade, while the hero was seen as just trash, unable to compete with him. Shuniko Yuire was confused because a year ago, when he met this girl, she didn't mention that she had a boyfriend. The man extended his hand, but instead of a handshake, he received a touch with only 2 fingers. Thus, the hero named Shuniko Yuire greeted Long Tengyu and introduced himself as a descendant of the Xiong royal family and Shin's fiancé. These words angered Long Tengyu. Then he removed his hand, not wanting to touch this guy anymore. Long Tengyu then cried out that Shuniko Yuire is an ordinary person and just a doll, while he and Shin are free to love each other, and the Shin family knows it. Long Tengyu deserves his position as general manager of Dragon Group, and his quick response is unmatched. And he is a talented doctoral student at Harvard University in the United States, and he is only 26 years old at the time of completion of his studies, making him the youngest doctoral student, and his name is well known and has always been considered a rare genius. Chu Hongshin was still thinking about this, but Shuniko Yuire noticed that Long Tengyu, despite his outstanding status, did not speak very well, which may indicate that he had not read a book for a long time. In response, the guy stated that he had read a lot of books in recent years and was ready to answer any questions and asked him something to make sure. And he also asked if Long Tengyu had read any books lately. It turned out that the hero not only read many books, including Guaman, Riemann, Hanman, Umoy Man, Solo Leveling, Player Reborn, and others, but they were not included in the school curriculum. Outraged, the protagonist asked if comics could be considered books. Shuniko Yuire explained that he did not speak very well and wanted to know what exactly was wrong with his statement. Hearing this, Long Tengyu was initially indignant, but then politely asked him not to disparage the comics. The main character decides to teach Long Tengyu and ask him about which Chinese civilization has been most respected for thousands of years. For Long Tenyu, this was not a difficult question, and he easily answered that it was filial piety. Watching what was happening, Chu Hongshin realized that the situation could get out of control. This was the correct answer, since filial piety is truly valued, and marriage to Shin was blessed by their ancestors, and following these principles is an expression of respect for them. Because between heaven and earth there will be no refuge where he could hide after this, and he will have to bear the punishment from the heavenly forces and the five thunders. In fact, there are many beautiful girls who admire him, even express a desire to marry him, and yet he does not agree, and in this Long Tenyu was right. Shuniko Yurei had never even seen Shin. This highlights his devotion, and in the end, he would do it even if Shin was an ugly monster, and he would have married her anyway. The indignant girl continued to listen to this and realized that the guy was making some absurd delusional statements. She then asked if Shuniko Yurei really said that there were many beautiful women who admired him and wanted to marry him. This was true, but the guy also claimed that he was just friends with them and never did anything that would make them regret. Since all the girls admire Shuniko Yurei and want to marry him, she decided to go home and ask her grandfather to annul their marriage, while demanding generous compensation, enough to last a lifetime. At that very moment, the cunning Shuniko Yurei realized that if he agreed to terminate this absurd contract, she would pay him a significant amount. His guess was confirmed, and Chu Hongshin wanted to know how much money he needed. Without losing hope, Shuniko Yurei asked the girl how much his freedom cost, and to get rid of this guy as quickly as possible. Dissatisfied, Long Tenyu sought to find out what the guy who was staring at his girlfriend was talking about. Suddenly, another girl appeared and noticed that Long Tenyu was very busy. The man replied that he was waiting for Shuniko Yurei, but he was only told to leave and close the door. The door was locked, and the impudent man, who was almost ready to attack the main character, came out. In fact, Shuniko Yurei said that even if she deceived a fake guy, she should choose someone similar, and this person clearly did not seem suitable. This guy was truly extraordinary. He could see it, but no matter how good he was, because Chu Hongshin had no intention of marrying someone she didn't like. With all her might, the girl wanted to find out how they could get rid of the marriage contract, but this was impossible, because it was his duty to his grandfather, and he promised to marry the girl and give him many grandchildren. Listening to everything that was said, Chu Hongshin was even more indignant as he treated the girl as an ordinary object that could be used. In response to this, she decided to clarify, in addition to finances, she is ready to offer him anything as long as he agrees to terminate the marriage contract. This proposal sounded attractive, and the guy thought about whether she would offer him some attractive girls, considering that when he arrived at this school, he noticed that there were many beautiful girls here, like clouds. As he got closer, he asked if Chu Hongshin could provide him with these girls. But this turned out to be impossible, since there was no one in this place who could compete with him. The lady could not tolerate this behavior and tried to hit him, and the beauty he desires turns out to be unavailable, and his shamelessness is condemned, considering that this school has over 40,000 students, of which 60% are students and 40% are attractive girls. Dealing with a total population of 15,000 people, he dared to imagine that they were all beauties. The hero did not deny this, and also noted that it seemed that she had been studying martial arts since childhood. As soon as the girl raised her leg, he immediately noticed one very interesting detail. What he saw really amazed him, because he had never seen anything like this before. Confused, the girl could not understand why he was looking at her like that and continued to examine her carefully. Getting even more angry, Chu Hongshin decided that the main character was a real pervert. She kept trying to beat him up because she hated the way he acted. Meanwhile, the guy was thinking that it really wasn't bad because her legs were clean and tidy, and she attacked with full force. Unfortunately, Chu Hongshin was holding on uncontrollably all this time. Because of this, she is easily thrown off balance, and Shuniko Yuiri decided to take advantage of this by launching a counterattack to make the girl fall. The next moment, she found herself at her desk as she lost her balance. Grabbing her hands, Shuniko Yuiri immobilized poor Chu Hongshin and could do with her as he pleased. Even though she had practiced kung fu from an early age and was already quite strong, she did not expect him to be so powerful and was unable to provide resistance, and so she begged him to let her go quickly, otherwise he would have to regret it. Despite all the circumstances, Shuniko Yuiri asked the girl if she would continue to fight if he let her go. At that moment, he had an idea that it would be best to tie the girl up. Taking out the bra, he decided to use it to tie up Chu Hongshin. Even though he was already an adult and actually took the bra, which made him a pervert, Chu Hongshin begged him to let her go, otherwise she would tell her grandfather about it. But Shuniko Yuiri didn't care, and with a little effort, he was easily able to tie up the lady. Scrubbing himself on the shoulders, he noted that this was truly impressive. At this time, Chu Hongshin became even more angry because no one had ever dared to insult her childhood, and she warned him to wait, claiming that he would soon pay for his words. Taking Chu Hongshin's place, Shuniko Yuiri decided to discuss the wedding, and after looking at the calendar, he noticed that next Friday was suitable for the ceremony, and despite the limited time, he was confident that if he did everything quickly, there would be no problems. The lady, trembling with anger, declared that Shuniko Yuiri should wait, and she threatened to tell her grandfather and let him settle the matter if he insisted. In fact, Shuniko Yuiri has already talked to Chu's grandfather, and he noted that Shin is a great girl, but with a difficult character, and grandfather knows about his skills and is confident that Shuniko Yuiri can conquer Chu Hongshin. Hearing this, the granddaughter didn't understand why her grandfather admired Shuniko Yuiri, and she knows that they met and talked for almost 4 hours, but she doesn't know what exactly they talked about. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, introducing himself as Teacher Tong, and the girl asked if Dr. Xiang was in the office. Then the headmistress realized that Tong had come specifically to Shuniko Yuiri, and this seemed strange to her. And this was the first time this man had returned to Shanghai to visit their school, and she could not understand how he knew that this was where he was. The brave guy immediately invited Tong to enter the office as if nothing had happened. The director was outraged to the limit because she could not understand why the guy did this to her. At this time, the teacher came to the director and could not understand what was happening here. Not fully understanding the situation, Chu Hongshin turned to Teacher Tong to find out why she needed Shuniko Yuiri. It turned out that the teacher was invited here because Dr. Xiang took her student's bra. Then it became clear to her that the bra with which Shuniko Yuiri tied her hands belonged to a student, and they probably had a close relationship, even if it was not clear why Tong appeared so openly in the principal's office. The director also noticed that Chu Hongshin's sportswear was very tight, but she had a hard time seeing whether she was wearing a bra. Perhaps Tong's bra is currently in the hands of the principal, and if Shuniko Yuiri returns it to Tong, she will have to untie her hands, and the teacher is not aware that Chu Hongshin's hands are tied by the bra. The teacher admitted that it was her fault, as she should have asked for a bra earlier. Throughout this period, Chu Hongshin was thinking that probably the two of them were hiding in a remote corner of the campus, and Shuniko Yuiri took off her bra and put it in his pocket, and after the incident, someone happened to pass by, and they were both so engrossed cleaning up clothes that Shuniko Yuiri forgot to return her bra. The director was fully aware that Tong was undoubtedly aware of her relationship with Shuniko Yuiri and did not want them to be together. And due to this, she came here with the intention of causing a dramatic scene. Suddenly, the main character stood up and admitted to the teacher that he had been using him, and proceeded to tell the teacher that he would use this bra for a little while and return it later. The girl didn't understand why Shuniko Yuiri needed a bra as a student. What would he use it for? Coming closer, The director said that if the teacher did not need anything else, then she urgently needed to return to the classroom. At this time, she began to leave, but could not understand what happened to director Chu Hongshin. Obviously unexpectedly for her, Teacher Tong turned out to be like this, and there really is something between them. And Shuniko Yuire and Teacher Tong are a couple that causes certain disturbances. After some time, the girl decided to ask if 100 million would be enough to help Tong Shin in the matter of his marriage. The guy really admitted that the teacher is very pretty, but if she really wants to follow him, he will not refuse. But their marriage contract cannot be terminated. To terminate this marriage contract, she doesn't know how many reasons she came up with, how many times she felt depressed, how many nights she suffered from insomnia, how many times she asked her grandfather, but it was no use. Shuniko Yuire came to the conclusion that this should not be so, and after all, he is the groom, and this marriage was concluded by their grandfathers. And when the two old men agreed, no family has the right to cancel the marriage without mutual consent. And if it does not believe in it, she can return home and discuss the situation with her grandfather and brother, who was there at the time. Hearing this answer, the girl then wanted to know why Shuniko Yuire agreed to the divorce. He couldn't believe that this was possible, and this marriage was arranged by his grandfather and the girl's grandfather. And he knew that he was raised very well, especially in terms of obedience. And Chu's grandfather believed that Chu Hongshin was far from an ideal wife. The lady continued to threaten and warn that if he does not agree to annul the marriage, she will try to satisfy his demands. But otherwise, even if she agrees to marry him, there will be unhappiness and hysterics in their house every day, since he himself is so decided. For Shuniko Yuire, this was not a problem, but the girl's family had money, and after the wedding, he would be able to hire many nannies, cooks, and cleaners so that she would not have to do household chores. Even if he had to endure the inconvenience, he would be able to handle it, and besides, after the wedding, they would mostly not meet during the day, and she, as his wife, would only have to sleep with him at night. Having escaped, the girl shouted at him to leave and never appear in front of her again. But this will not work because her grandfather asked Shuniko Yuire to come to her and even gave him the opportunity to work at her school to earn money. Chu Hongshin immediately decided to inquire about his education, since in order to work here, he probably needed some kind of education. Shuniko Yuire has traveled a lot with his grandfather since childhood, and only today appeared at school for the first time, and therefore, until now, he did not have the opportunity to receive an education. Continuing her indignation, the girl still wanted to know what specialty he had. This was a really difficult question for him, because he has a couple of modest specialties related to medicine and martial arts. At that time, the director believed that martial arts was not needed, and for her this skill was useless, since her school had security, including a matchmaker, and Shuniko Yuire was not needed. And as for medical skills, the school's hospital has many talented doctors, more than 20 chief and deputy chief doctors, as well as 30 ordinary doctors. One of the doctors returned from the United States after defending his doctoral dissertation, with 10 years of clinical experience and having published 10 articles in the most prestigious medical journals in the United States and the world, so Shuniko Yuire is absolutely not needed here. After hearing about the head doctor's skills, the guy wanted to meet her to see who she really was. The stunned girl did not know what to do, but still agreed to invite Shuniko Yuire to the hospital so that he could look at the doctors who work there. This school is very large, and you have to use transport to move around its premises, since it is the best university in Shanghai, and its hospital is considered one of the best in the city. The doctor, upon returning home, initially wanted to work in the largest hospital in Shaochen, but after Chu Hongshin provided him with a department in this hospital, he did not hesitate to accept the offer and came to work here. Meanwhile, Shuniko Yuire wondered how the school principal could own such a cool car and offered to trade it for his bike, believing that the car suited his style. The angry girl ordered him to shut up, since he doesn't even know what a feeling of shame is. A moment later, they parked near the school hospital to take a look at the doctors working there. A doctor named Miao Ren was supposed to be inside, but she was currently busy, so they decided to wait in the hallway. In one of the chambers, Shuniko Yuire discovered a girl whom he had recently saved. And then a question arose. Why did this student end up in a coma again? And recently she came to her senses after Yusi woke up, and everything was in order. However, the bra was never found, and teacher Tong claims to have given it to students in her class. After Yusi came to her senses, teacher Tong allowed them to study on their own and left, and she doesn't know where exactly she went. And now her classmates are making fun of Yusi, which is just impudence. One of the students deliberately forced Yusi to be more active, which was quite cruel, and Shuniko Yuire admitted that he really wanted Yusi to recover. Meanwhile, the school principal overheard this entire conversation and realized that she would have to tell her grandfather a lot. Yuxi's father was previously the deputy director of the Shanghai Police Department, and if something really happened to Yuxi, her father would not give up. Entering the room, the school principal wanted to find out from a doctor named Miao Zhen what happened to the student. She only helped her do all the tests, and it turned out that there were no abnormalities in her body, but she was unconscious, and this was strange. The girl told the doctor that this student's name is Yusi. Her father, Mao Gongtan, was the first executive deputy director of the city police department, and when the senior bureau chief retired, he was the best candidate to become bureau chief. When Mao Yuxi suddenly entered Shanghai University, Chu Hongshin was worried about whether she would like the new environment. With complete loss of hope, the doctor insisted that her tests revealed nothing unusual. Coming closer, Shuniko Yuire noticed that using Western medicine methods can be compared to eating fast food, causing more harm than good to the body. Moreover, this can be tested, and the guy is ready to demonstrate the results right now if he is given such an opportunity. Miao Ren did not immediately recognize the guy, but Chu Hongshin introduced him as Shuniko Yuire, who is friends with her family. The lady apologized to the guy and asked if he was studying medicine, since it turned out that they were colleagues. The girl wanted to get to know the guy better, and she asked about what university he attended and what specialty he studied. After thinking a little, the hero said that he had never attended university. His grandfather taught him Chinese medicine. Then Miao Zheng thought that although she specializes in Western medicine, she has also done research in Chinese medicine, and many Chinese medical families have passed on their knowledge from generation to generation, and most of them have real effects, which should not be underestimated. That's why the doctor asked Shuniko Yuire to diagnose the patient to find out what happened to her. Traditional Chinese medicine pays attention to detail, and even just by looking at it, he can determine that the problem is hidden in the heart. This is a very serious condition, and the usual methods will not be able to bring her back to consciousness, and the only way is to use needles. The doctor realized that the use of silver needles required a more complex approach than just impulsive methods, and required not only knowledge of all acupuncture points and body functions, but also extreme precision so as not to harm the patient. Chu Hongshin, watching everything that was happening, did not believe her future husband and asked him about his confidence in his actions. "I'm not sure, so I need to try," was his answer. However, Chu Hongshin just clarified that Miao Zheng is a doctor of science who returned from abroad with 10 years of practice experience, and if not for her, there would be no one to turn to. While the director inquired about the possible risks of the procedure, Miao Zhen knew that they were minimal, and she carefully watched Shuniko Yuire's confident expression, and the heart problem could only be diagnosed using a machine. But he immediately determined that she is sick, and this confirmed his skills. Suddenly, Shuniko Yuire asked Chu Hongshin to undress the girl quickly, otherwise he would not be able to use the needles. Sometime later, the director removed the girl's shirt, and he could begin the procedure, having received the assurance that he would be warned if he needed to stop. Concentrating, the hero began the procedure using his skills. All this was aimed at feeling the patient's heartbeat and determining the point for inserting the needle. After a moment, he finally found the right point. The next moment, he seemed to be transformed, using all his medical skills to apply a unique acupuncture technique. All the needles were inserted right next to the heart to instantly defeat the disease. Under the influence of such therapeutic techniques, the girl's hand instantly began to tremble. She groaned in pain, despite the fact that she had been in a coma all this time. For the girls watching the process, what was happening seemed incredible and unpredictable. Mao Yuxi's illness was unusual, and his method of using 5 needles for rejuvenation was successful, which could have had serious consequences. Now, Shuniko Yuire had to concentrate his efforts to remove all the needles. After a few minutes, the patient's breathing became smooth and her pulse returned to normal. The result obtained was indeed favorable, as the patient's condition stabilized and Shuniko Yuire successfully removed the silver needle. Noticing Miao Ren's embarrassment, Mr. Xiong refused to give advice, expressing gratitude for the recognition of his medical skills, and he acknowledged Miao Ren's high level of skill and expressed his desire to learn ancient methods from her. Leaving the ward, the hero noted that he does not provide consultations because he does not have medical qualifications, and he admitted that many doctors treat him with mistrust due to the lack of official confirmation of his skills. At that moment, the director realized that despite the guy's brilliant medical skills, he was providing assistance illegally, without the appropriate qualifications. The doctor thought that although Shuniko Yuire did not have a medical certificate, his unique and outstanding skills in medicine at such a young age were a rare exception. Miao Ren decided to ask if they were friends, how old he was, and how he acquired such high skills at such a young age. The girl replied that her grandfather was a great fighter in China, and she had communicated with him since childhood, and Shuniko Yuire received knowledge of medicine from him. However, many did not know what was going on in his heart, and he was always serious, but his thoughts remained a mystery. Walking through the streets, the hero reflected that he initially wanted to share information about cancer, but did not expect a refusal. And fortunately, he had already studied ophthalmology since childhood and managed to take a few glances while no one was monitoring the student's treatment, which made him very happy. After all, Shuniko Yuire had also suffered from a similar illness in his youth. When the guy was treating her illness, he noticed changes in her hand. At this time, the student suddenly woke up and felt extremely strange. Immediately after she stood up, a violent series of coughs began, and an unusual liquid began to flow from her mouth. Those present could not understand what happened to the girl and why she was coughing something incomprehensible. Looking at her hand, Shuniko Yuire realized that the girl's condition could be critical. From weakness, the student fell again and could no longer move, and everyone believed that something unimaginable had happened to her. She lay back on the hospital bed and found herself motionless. The worried guy rushed to the hospital room, realizing that the student's life was in danger. Yusi looked in pain while unconscious and fell back into a coma. A lot of unidentified liquid came out of her mouth, and everyone was interested in what happened to her. Even the experienced Dr. Miao Ren did not know what this phenomenon was because she had encountered it for the first time. The concerned woman approached the girl to find out what happened to her and express her readiness to help. Suddenly, Shuniko Yuire appeared, forbidding him to touch the girl. Now the student is in danger, and any touching her can lead to immediate death. Time was short, and it was necessary to help Shuniko Yuire disinfect the silver needle, and from the beginning he intended to apply the impulse, then make a concrete decision. Measuring the girl's pulse, the guy was thinking about how to get out of this hopeless situation. Now it was clear to him that he had been careless, and the girl had suffered from heart failure for many years, and her body could not tolerate his standard life-saving method, So, she had a strong reaction, and that is why she had to be immersed in warm water and started slowly treatment. Meanwhile, the silver needle was disinfected, and Miao Ren was thinking about the next steps. The needles were heated in time, and Dr. Shuniko Yuire was about to begin the operation. After asking the girls to leave, he insisted that no one interfere and allowed himself to continue. He then performed acupuncture directly on the neck, and also below the navel, covering all the necessary points for treatment. Now he was faced with the task of giving Yusi a massage and cleansing her meridians. With precise movements, he performed procedures that had a healing effect on the girl. Miao Ren made sure that he was completely focused on saving the person, and his moral principles were probably good, and he did not conform to the idea that Chu Hongshin had. Finally, the procedure was completed and the danger was over, and it was difficult to work with such serious patients. But fortunately, he had previously treated a similar patient with his grandfather, which was what allowed Shuniko Yuire to successfully help the girl. Chu Hongshin realized that Shuniko Yuire's grandfather was an outstanding Chinese medicine specialist in China, and it was not surprising that he could practice this type of treatment. At the moment, there was no threat to the student's life, but her heart was exceptionally weak, and she needed careful care, and the body could not be strongly stimulated, and although she was sleeping now, she would wake up soon. Since she was a child, she has had a serious illness, and her life has been incredibly difficult. The director was curious about the acupuncture technique, but she was especially interested in why breast massage was necessary after this procedure and how this related to the treatment of the disease. It turned out that breast massage is not directly related to the treatment of the disease, and Shuniko Yuire argued that it promotes development, increases elasticity, and in the future, the patient will become the object of everyone's attention. The director also addressed the issue of reciprocity, as Shuniko Yuire helped her twice without charging her, even for medical expenses. However, Chu Hongshin could be sure that the help from Shuniko Yuire would be free and effective, but the director did not agree to provide her breasts for massage. Tong suddenly entered, having heard about her student's stay here, and thanked everyone present for curing her. At that moment, Miaojen admitted that it was not she who saved the student, but Shuniko Yuire, who carried out all the necessary procedures. At this time, Shuniko Yuire was thinking that it was almost noon, and he had a meeting with friends in the afternoon, and after eating, he would return to Chu Hongshin to talk further. Planning to return if he didn't drink too much alcohol, he decided to say goodbye to them now. Each of the girls perceived the guy differently. Some considered him an idiot, some found incomprehensibility in the traditional Chinese medicine of their ancestors, and some understood that the student had been saved twice, and this man was wonderful. At this time, Yusi began to slowly come to her senses. The girls quickly came up to help Yusi put on clothes. The student, still dazed, woke up and wanted to understand why she lost consciousness and where she was now. The worried girls stood nearby and tried to find out how she was feeling, and Yusi, coming to her senses, was confused and did not know what to answer. Having finally come to her senses, she sought to find out what happened, and she remembers that she was on the sports ground, and now she woke up here, and it was important for her to understand who saved her and by what method. Teacher Tong decided to admit that the situation was extremely urgent, and fortunately, Mr. Shuniko Yuire, a friend of the director, happened to pass by and saved her. Having learned about this, Yusi expressed a desire to meet her savior, but the director replied that he was not there now and had already left. Yusi decided to ask the director to provide her with Shuniko Yuire's mobile phone number, since she really wanted to personally thank her savior. The director, dumbfounded, claimed that her mobile phone remained in the office, and according to the promise, when she found the number, she would send it to Yusi. And in reality, she did not have this number. The joyful girl thanked the principal, realizing that this was not an easy moment for her, And since today was Friday and she wanted to rest, she asked Teacher Tong to help her get home. As she left, the director praised Miao Ren for her hard work. The experienced doctor realized that although her help was important, it was Shuniko Yuire who performed all the procedures. When she returned 6 months ago from training, she realized that he had unique skills and she had room for improvement. As events unfolded, Chu Hongshin realized that Shuniko Yuire was a very talented person, and now she needed to figure out how to make him give up completely. Thinking about him, the director began to think that maybe his skills would be useful in the future. Remembering her younger years, when she and her grandfather helped people in different countries, Chu Hongshin realized that Shuniko Yuire had amazing abilities. If he qualified as a doctor at such a young age, he could become an important figure like his grandfather. No matter what he becomes, she is sure that he will haunt her. Chu Hongshin realized that Shuniko Yuire was a real test, and she needed to find a way to make him give up completely. As a friend, Miao Ren called and asked if Yuxi's illness had returned. The concerned woman immediately wanted to know how the student was feeling and whether everything was okay with her. However, in fact, everything was going well, and the girl only wanted to communicate with the leader. Suddenly, the doctor said that this was scary, and Chu Hongshin immediately agreed to meet her in a cafe to thoroughly discuss the whole situation. It turned out that the doctor was actually planning to resign. She considered the possibility of going abroad to train and improve her skills, and then returning to help. This decision was caused by Yuxi's illness, which struck everyone today. At the same time, the director did not dissuade her, but the internal department of the school was the busiest, and she, being the most qualified doctor on the medical staff, had to stay at least for a while to appoint a senior doctor or recommend a suitable candidate if decides to leave. Miao Ren really hoped for understanding, given that there was currently a suitable candidate, and she believed that if she offered him the position, he would not refuse. The surprised girl continued to look at the doctor and realized that we were talking about Shuniko Yuira. It was true, his medical skills were admirable, and his base salary of 50,000 made him an attractive candidate. For Miao Ren, the base salary was 50,000. If he accepts the offer, his salary will no doubt be comparable to that of ordinary doctors, and especially considering his study of Chinese medicine, the director really needs such a doctor. It was clear to the experienced doctor that the main goal of the hospital in their school was to heal and save people, and if the patient recovered, it did not matter by what method this was achieved. And the woman believed that if Shuniko Yuire accepted the offer, the workload on other departments would decrease, and the Chinese medicine department is likely to expand. At this time, Chu Hongshin was thinking about how she was so annoyed by Shuniko Yuire's behavior in the office that she was losing her common sense, and now it was time to ask him about the possibility of taking the position of a doctor. And so Miao Ren suddenly decided to ask her to give her Shuniko Yuire's phone number so that she could invite him to school. The doctor immediately guessed that the girl didn't even know his phone number, as she felt extremely awkward. I really don't know his number, she admitted, and their families, despite their long friendship, met for the first time today, and Shuniko Yuire did not call in advance, so the number was unknown. However, Shuniko Yuire did not achieve his goal today, and he promised to return, and so according to her intuition, he will stay, and she will call Miao Ren back when that happens. As a result, Miao Zheng decided to wait for the girl's call, confident that he would stay even if the salary was only 10,000 yuan a month. The thoughtful girl, nevertheless, decided to find out what would happen if Shuniko Yuire refused the offer to become a school doctor, how the conversation was developing, and whether Miao Zhen would leave in this case. The determined girl asked not to be held back, as she had decided that she would go to the United States to continue her education, regardless of Shuniko Yuire's decision. Indeed, only Miao Ren could accept this choice, and if Shuniko Yuire refused, it would remain unknown who would become the new school doctor. At this time, the hero was wandering around the city, thinking that his grandfather had less than 2,000 yuan in cash left, and he had already spent more than 1,000 to return home. Except for money for food and water, he had nothing left. Fortunately, he rented this apartment, although it was far from ideal, but still cheaper than other rental options. Upon entering, Shuniko Yuire noticed that there was a tenant inside the apartment, busy with some business. She was unhappy with his behavior because she rented this apartment for him and drove him away for several days, although it was accidental, and now she wanted to know when the guy would be able to pay the rent. The completely calm hero asked his tenant to wait, explaining that he had not eaten yet and asked permission to cook, and he had just bought a pork chop on the street and was going to cook shredded pork noodles. She remained steadfast, insisting that the rent was overdue, and if he didn't pay today, he would be kicked out of the house. The guy decided to share his find with a rich bride, and he assured that the rental problem would be solved quickly. Today, he found his rich daughter-in-law, and no later than tomorrow, he will give her the rent, which he will pay for a year. The woman did not believe his words, claiming that a high IQ does not guarantee a happy relationship with a rich bride. Apparently, the tenant was too lenient with him, and he was slacking off for the entire month, as she fed him 3 times a day, and if he couldn't pay the rent, she intended to throw out all his things. Suddenly, the woman rushed into his arms, begging the hero to pay the rent, and she wished that her daughter could go to school, and it was difficult for her to wait for a whole month, and she urged him to hurry up. Shuniko Yuire promised to immediately find his daughter-in-law and ask her for some money, promising to return the rent with interest. Luckily, it worked, and the woman believed him, and he assured that if he couldn't pay the rent tomorrow, he would leave immediately. The woman was very pleased with this answer and asked what he was going to cook for lunch. He promised to cook whatever she wanted, but he has no money, and he would cook a sumptuous dinner if he could. And the woman guessed that he was asking her to buy vegetables. The guy, entering his room, asked the tenant if her daughter would come to him for lunch, but she went for a walk with her classmates, and today she will not be at home. The guy decided that he would first cook the food and then go to the market and let the 2 families wait for him for a while. But unexpectedly, the daughter still came, wondering why her mother was carrying vegetables upstairs, as if she had asked Shuniko Yuire to cook them. The puzzled woman made excuses by saying that Shuniko Yuire had no money, so she bought him vegetables and was going to cook for him. And then she asked her daughter why she wasn't going out with her classmates. The girl said that her friends felt bad and she decided to go home, and so the meeting was canceled, and she secretly allowed Shuniko's brother Yuira to cook dinner for her. The unlucky mother continued to make excuses, saying that she really bought food for Shuniko Yuire, and her daughter could check with him if she did not believe her mother. The lightning-fast hero hurried down to the first floor. He told the girl that he was really hungry, and her mother was so kind that she not only bought vegetables, but also meat. He also said that he doesn't have to pay monthly rent, and he's going to cook a hearty meal today, which he's very grateful for. The dissatisfied woman thought that the guy found such a loophole, took her food as if on loan, and at the same time canceled the rent for a month. And in her opinion, Shuniko Yuire was in a heavenly position, because he claimed that tomorrow he would find a rich bride who will lend him money to pay the rent, although this is apparently a lie. The good-natured girl agreed, inviting her brother to come to them in the evening to cook and dine together. The embarrassed boy also noticed that Yang Zi looked especially beautiful today. This behavior clearly did not please the woman, and she decided to find out how dare Shuniko Yuire suck up to Yang Zi in her house, and she was going to kick him out of the house, regardless of his excuses. Despite his dissatisfaction, the guy began to leave, saying that there was no need to be nervous, and he was just complimenting Yang Zi, trying to look decent, and he was poor, he had no job, and there was no way he could encroach on a woman's heart. The girl immediately began talking to her mother, expressing her dissatisfaction with her behavior and saying that if she said anything like that again, the daughter intended to ignore her mother. The puzzled mother wanted to find out from her daughter which of her friends had health problems, and it turned out that Yusi had problems, and today her illness manifested itself twice, which was the reason for their separation. The mother immediately invited her daughter to visit Yusi, since they are good friends, and she was ready to give her money so that she could buy two things and visit Yusi. And the girl, however, did not want to use her mother's money, believing that this should not be done. Not understanding why her daughter suddenly got angry, the woman wanted to find out if everything was okay in her relationship with Yusi. Yangzi explained to her mother that she was not going to go to Yushi because their families were very different, and she only visited Yushi once, and Yuxi's mother was too arrogant, so she didn't want to see her again. Meanwhile, Shuniko Yurei stood at the bus stop and thought that there was a restaurant nearby and he needed to take a bus. And fortunately, he had a photographic memory, so he easily remembered all the bus routes in the city. Counting the minutes, he waited for the bus to appear. At the end of the countdown, the bus arrived immediately. Suddenly, someone braked in an expensive car. It was Yusi, who seemed to see someone very familiar, and asked her father to wait. Indeed, it was her savior who was getting on public transport to get to the cafe. The girl immediately asked her father to go get this bus, but the man did not understand why this was necessary. The student only said that she could explain to her father later, and he just needed to follow the bus. At this time, the main character was traveling on public transport and thinking about how wonderful this day was. It was also beautiful because you could see a lot of beautiful girls on the bus. But suddenly, he discovered something amazing. It turns out that near one of the girls there was a very suspicious man who was doing something strange. Drooling was flowing from his mouth, and his gaze was like that of a madman. Standing in this position, he could gaze intently at the girl who was sitting nearby. Watching all this, the guy realized that he hadn't noticed it himself. That's why he needed to find a way to tell this girl what was going on. Absorbed in watching something on her phone, the girl was not paying attention to her surroundings. What she saw on her smartphone completely captured her attention. The girl, named Qianyun, was enthusiastically browsing the news feed. Noticing that she was on a social network, Shuniko Yuire added her as a friend and sent her a message. In the message, he warned her to be careful as there was a suspicious man behind her. The pervert kept staring at the girl and acting strangely on the bus, and fortunately, Qianyun noticed it. After telling her not to worry and to focus her gaze ahead, Shuniko Yuire advised her to ask the old man to make room, and after that she could leave and remain calm. By kindly offering her seat to the old man, Qianyun evoked gratitude. Thus, Qianyun avoided the conflict situation, and the pervert no longer posed a threat. In her message, she notified the stranger that she was now safe. In gratitude for the attention and warning, the Qianyun girl sent the guy a heartfelt message. Although the guy was happy about the compliment, the girl still wanted to know where he was. Shuniko Yuire replied that he was on the bus and invited her to guess his location, or failing that, introduce herself. Qianyun tried to look around for him, but couldn't find him, so she introduced herself and said that her name was Shangguan Qianyun. The savior, in turn, introduced himself as Shuniko Yuire, and the girl was very happy about this new acquaintance. Qianyun greatly appreciated the kindness of Shuniko Yuire, especially compared to the strange person she encountered on the bus. Shuniko Yuire wisely noted that gratitude was unnecessary, since any man would have done the same. He continued to watch the pervert, laughing at him. Suddenly, the guy started yelling at the older man, accusing him of stepping on his shoes. The pervert's displeasure was clearly visible on his face. Suddenly, someone exclaimed that he had no leg. This was the same hooligan who tried to create a scandal on the bus. The elderly man quickly denied the accusations, but the bully did not give up, insisting on his own. The enraged man wanted to talk with the hooligan, but the latter, deciding to continue the incident, grabbed him. Passengers started shouting and threatening the hooligan, and Qianyun filmed the incident to post on social media. Ignoring the indignation of the passengers, the hooligan hit the old man hard in the face. The poor man's dentures flew out due to the strong impact, and he began to fall. Qianyun was shocked by what was happening and could not take her eyes off the old man, who seemed to be falling directly on her. Suddenly, someone grabbed her hand from behind. Shuniko Yurei extended his hand to support the old man, saving him from falling. It turned out that it was the same Shuniko Yurei who had previously saved the girl and now helped the old man. Addressing the girl by name, Shuniko Yurei expressed concern for her well-being. The embarrassed girl admitted that everything was fine, but was somewhat surprised how Shuniko Yurei knew her name, and later she remembered that he introduced himself to her in correspondence. Shuniko Yurei decided to contact the bully, warning him that he would not get away with escape, and he was responsible for what happened. The bully continued to express his hostility, threatening the guy and insisting on his leaving. Shuniko Yurei decided to show the bully that he will not tolerate fingers being pointed at him. With a slight movement of his hand, he demonstrated his dexterity by disarming the scoundrel's fingers. The pervert and the bully screamed in pain as their fingers could no longer move. Shuniko Yurei offered the bully a chance to reform by finding the old man's family and supporting him. Otherwise, there would be no punishment. Meanwhile, Shangguan Qianyun administered first aid to the old man, revealing that he was suffering from epilepsy and his attack was caused by a push and attack by a bully. The determined guy offered his help, but for a nominal fee of 50 million yuan. The enraged bully continued to shout, threatening Shuniko Yurei and calling himself a member of the Black Dragon Tea Club. The main character did not pay attention to the threats and continued to confront the villain. The insolent man tried to attract public attention by talking about the criminal organization to which he allegedly belonged. Shuniko Yurei dealt a blow to the bully, rightly fighting the scoundrel. The police arrived and arrested the hooligan for his actions on the bus. Unfortunately, the old man was left unconscious, and Shuniko Yurei wanted to help him. For the time being, he decided to use the method of passing a silver needle through acupuncture points to try to bring the old man back to consciousness. The concerned girl asked if this method could help the old man. Even with the use of Chinese medicine, it is impossible to completely cure it, only to restrain the progression of the disease. 5 needles are able to restore the clarity of his mind. Shangguan Qianyun didn't know that waking up after a few needles was even possible. Having proposed a deal, the guy made it clear that if he succeeds, then the girl is obliged to invite him to lunch, and if he fails, he himself will offer her lunch. The girl felt deceived, since, regardless of the outcome, they would still have to dine together. Shuniko Yuirei's use of acupuncture could effectively cure the old man with just a few simple steps, and despite seeing many doctors, this was the first time a person had done such a thing. If such an excellent doctor worked at their university hospital, the situation would be much better. After some time, Shuniko Yurei completed the task, bringing the old man back to life, after which they went to dinner. At the moment, they were heading to the Fumanlu restaurant located nearby. All this time, the rescued student watched the couple and thought that perhaps they were dating. It seemed strange because she didn't understand why they were together. The director seemed to have a relationship with Chu Hongshin and Shuniko Yurei, but now he was alone with this girl. The father still wanted to know if the girl was following her classmate, and it turned out that Shangguan Qianyun was a nurse in the hospital, and they had a good relationship with him, and she just didn't expect him to be her boyfriend. Indignant, the man thought that this guy was her boyfriend, and if this was so, then he would now break his legs, and how dare he do something like that. But since he had an appointment with Dr. Lin, he decided it was better to leave here. The concerned man claimed that Dr. Lin should cure the girl's illness, and he needed to be sure, because Lin is one of the 4 most famous doctors in China, and the father specifically contacted him to examine the girl. Sometime later, they found themselves in a restaurant, and the boy was surprised that Shuniko Yuire had brought his daughter-in-law, but, for some reason, did not warn them in advance, and it would seem that they should have chosen a more luxurious place, especially since they had not yet ordered. Embarrassed, Shangguan Qianyun immediately began to deny, and they just met, and she is not his daughter-in-law. She is really taking too many risks today, because she just met a guy and is already having dinner with him. The main character's relatives treated their daughter-in-law in a special way, and she could eat with them. Although this conversation embarrassed the girl, she still said that she works as a nurse at school. The little guy's name was Monkey, and the big guy's name was Bear. They were very worried about who this daughter-in-law was. These names really made the girl laugh, because people named Bear and Monkey were indeed very interesting. Both guys really deserved their nicknames, but Shangguan Qianyun was curious to know why Shuniko Yurei's brother was nicknamed the Hanged Ghost. It turned out that they grew up together since childhood, and by the time Shuniko Yurei was older than them, his face was pale, and his physique was thin, and with his tongue constantly sticking out, he resembled a hanged ghost, hence the nickname. The monkey also said that the bear has a lot of money and earns hundreds of thousands, so the girl can order any food she wants. Bear added that he earns a lot because he works harder than Monkey, and every morning he wakes up before 3 o'clock to work as much as possible. However, the angry macaque claimed that he had been cooking barbecue for years, finishing work late at night, and believed that she could outdo him. While Shuniko Yuire asked the girl not to be surprised, explaining that they have been competing for over 10 years and they don't even know each other's results, and she doesn't need to worry about them, so she can order her own food. The guys did not stop quarreling, promising that they would treat their companions and pay for the food, and they also expressed a desire to meet again. The girl stopped them, saying that she was ready to meet tomorrow at noon, but they should no longer call her daughter-in-law, since they were just friends. Shuniko Yuire confirmed to Monkey that he had just met Shangguan Qianyun, and they were just friends, so there was no point in talking nonsense. While the hero was aware that Qianyun is a good girl who doesn't care about him, he just threw down the fishing rod to catch a big fish, and compared to Chu Hongxin, who is beautiful, but their personalities are too different. Meanwhile, Qianyun said that she had to go to work, so she would leave first and invite him to lunch next time. All the guys couldn't take their eyes off the girl's graceful figure. There were a lot of beautiful girls at the university, and the guys heard that the university is a place where beauties gather, and yet it was difficult to get into the university. Suddenly, the main character announced that he was going to enter Shin University and asked his friends if they would like to go with him, and they immediately agreed. Stunning, handsome men gathered to conquer all the girls of the university. The monkey noticed that there were really only beauties around. The bear also saw that beautiful girls were surrounding them, each more beautiful than the previous one. The university is really impressive because they have never seen such beautiful girls. Then the friends reminded that Shuniko Yuire had business to do as he was looking for Chu Hongxin, while they were about to go to the girls surrounding them to meet each other. Ungrateful friends went without him to meet girls, but he decided not to pay attention to this because he still needed to talk to his sister-in-law. Suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder. It was Teacher Tong, who thanked him for the morning, because if not for him, Yuxi might have died and it would have been hard for her. He didn't deny her words, agreeing that she was lucky that he was there at that moment. Otherwise, Yuxi might already be dead, and he needed to do something. The teacher asked for some time because she wanted to invite him to lunch as a thank you, and he gave her his phone number via QR code. Thus, they decided to add each other as friends, and Shuniko Yuire handed over his QR code for this. The satisfied guy began to leave and asked the girl to invite him to lunch early, and she wished him good luck and caution. After that, the girl began to write a message to someone. The message was addressed to Yuxi, and Tong sent her the savior's phone number. The girl asked her father to help her find this man, and he asked for the man's name. Then she decided to tell Shuniko Yuire's name and phone number. Sometime later, in the office of the director, Shuniko Yuire expressed a desire to find out when he and his daughter-in-law would get married. Outraged, the director asked him if he really wanted the girl to marry a man she had never seen before. And she warned that if her grandfather tried to force her to do so, she would go abroad and never return. The guy quickly realized that the girl had already made her decision if she said such things. Simply put, he could stay here as the school doctor, and they only interacted for a short time, and if she fell in love with him, then everything could be resolved, and otherwise they would end the engagement. Throughout the day, Chu Hongshin thought about this, and despite not having a doctor's license and not being able to work in hospitals or open his own clinic, he could stay here as a school doctor. And if he is silent, no one will know, and she warned to be careful around doctors to avoid problems, and if he is caught, she will not be able to help. The doctor's salary will be 10,000 yuan, and the department has a small bonus, and Shuniko Yuire was happy about this outcome and agreed. Despite the small salary, he wanted to see her sincere desire to invite her to this position before answering. The slightly cheeky guy decided to ask for an advance payment of 3,000 yuan since he needed to pay a month's rent, and as compensation, he offered to give him a chest massage. After Shuniko Yuire was slapped, he was rejected, but fortunately, he was still given an advance, and he really needed this money. Suddenly, there was a scream, followed by a request for help, which was strange, considering that there were still people in need of help in the large school dormitory. Listening carefully, the guy realized that the voice belonged to the girl, since it was barely audible. Realizing that someone might be in danger, the guy immediately decided to act. Since the girl could really have serious problems, she could be in critical condition. The guard noticed the guy and asked why he was running to the girl's dormitory, and Shuniko Yuire did not have enough time to explain, and he asked to call an ambulance. Having burst into one of the dorm rooms, the guy ordered not to touch the girl, who was feeling unwell. She had just passed away, but fortunately all her organs except her heart were still functioning. Otherwise, Great Fairy Luo's technique would be useless. The security came in and was surprised how fast this guy was running away, and the dorm is only for girls, and there is no place for guys. Shuniko Yuire asked to speak more quietly and not interfere, as he needed to help the girl. The puzzled students could not understand what happened to the girl and why she felt bad. The hero decided to thank his brother for calling for help, and if the girl had died, he would have been accused of murder. It turned out that the guy was dressed as a girl and spoke in the voice of a man. It was Qian Cheng wearing a wig, and the guard did not expect that he would dare to wear women's clothing and sneak into the women's dormitory. Security immediately took the intruder away, and he had to be taken to the post to wait there for the police to arrive. The security guard realized that Qian Cheng was really brave by dressing up and sneaking into the dormitory, and next time she should keep a closer eye on the intruders. Turning around, she remembered that there was another guy in the room who had come uninvited. It was Shuniko Yuire, who was kissing an unfamiliar girl. The stunned woman could not understand what this young man was doing. It turned out that he performed artificial respiration using a needle, and over time, her health was no longer in danger. The girl started screaming, claiming that Qian Cheng was going to kill her, but the guy calmed her down, assuring her that she was now safe and her attacker had been detained. Having woken up, the student immediately wanted to find out who saved her. Her rescuer was passing by and heard a faint cry for help, so he decided to intervene, and fortunately, he came in time. Otherwise, she would not have survived. It all happened in such a way that the girl left the physical education lesson to take medicine, and at that time, Qian Cheng went after her and tried to attack her. Suddenly, the hero received a message from his friend, who wrote that the situation was very serious because someone was being beaten on the playground. Hearing gratitude from the girl, the hero immediately went to help his friends, since he was obliged to help them. Everyone who saw this fight shouted for Guan Tongse to stop, since this way he could accidentally kill an innocent guy. After all, he was just watching the girls training and could not know that one of them would turn out to be his girlfriend. This made the man angry, because after he breaks a couple of his ribs, his tiny brain will probably remember the lesson. At that moment, Shuniko Yurei decided to defend his friend and told Mister that this was too cruel. That is why he hit the impudent man who dared to beat his friend with force. Then the man noticed another fighter and realized that he was indeed very fast and his aura was different from the auras of others. His friends wanted the guy to get revenge and hoped that the fight would continue. But the guy noticed that Teacher Tong should educate his students and promote justice. And since his brother was attacked, he wanted to resolve the situation in a duel. And on the other hand, if her student was injured, then it would be a misunderstanding. Tong immediately began to tell her that her brother was beaten by Master Guan from Taekwondo, and the Taekwondo club of their school was very powerful. Even the deputy director had to put up with his three-pointer. Guanping Tongse is the fifth dan of Taekwondo, and his father is a mid-level leader in the business market, and it is said that he is a very influential person, and few people in the school dare to offend him, so he could not be provoked. Therefore, the teacher urged the doctor not to be too impulsive. The brave guy approached the loser and said that he had offended his brother, and he needed to kneel down and apologize. The huge man did not believe that this would happen, so he invited Shuniko Yuira to try his fist. Suddenly, the hero decided to stop the combat, but Guanping Tongse emphasized that his fist was not going to wait long. At the same moment, he began to take something out of his pocket. It turned out to be a wig, which he immediately put on. Thus, he carefully prepared for the upcoming battle and was ready for battle. Since Shuniko Yuire was a cosplayer, Guanping Tongse strived to turn him into a real handsome man. The first attack was repelled, and the guy remained calm during the fight because he had 5 years of experience. Using his skills and 5 years of experience, he showed signs of respect so as not to let his opponent down. This sight was impressive because the doctor not only had healing skills, but also mastered martial arts, and it was not surprising that he could compete with Guanping Tongse. All this time, they continued to fight, and no one was able to gain the upper hand. But behind them, there was always a mysterious guy, carefully licking his hand. He looked rather strange and seemed to enjoy the spectacle of the battle. While Guanping Tongse continued to fight the protagonist, he found his opponent to be quite interesting. Tong urgently asked the doctor to be vigilant, as the most powerful technique of the Taekwondo club was used, and the girl warned that this technique was used to defeat even an adult bull, and an ordinary person would not withstand such a blow. And now it is aimed at Dr. Xiong, and this may end badly. The hero was ready for any attack and determined not to lose, because his blow was ready to create an opportunity for a counterattack. Today, they both sought to learn a lesson from the fight. Shuniko Yuire struck directly between the legs with force, and this style is known as the 8th Libai style. His hands could literally crush chicken eggs. All this time, Guanping Tongse was in unimaginable pain, screaming in fear and hatred towards his opponent, but he was unable to resist. Fortunately, it turned out that the girl was worrying in vain, because the doctor easily defeated this impudent man. The exhausted Taekwondo master fell to his knees, completely defeated. He pressed his hands to his crotch and declared that this was the meanest move ever used against him. Shuniko Yuire decided to give him advice, warning him against lifting his legs that high in the future, explaining that it could be extremely painful, while leaving him a wig as a souvenir. The mysterious guy continued to closely monitor the battle, and when the fight ended, he decided that he would like to meet the one who won. Approaching the girl, the hero admitted that the teacher was right, and there was a misunderstanding, and if she allowed, he planned to take his friends for treatment. The embittered master tried to find out the guy's name in order to find him later. Turning around, the guy introduced himself as Shuniko Yuire and explained that he could be found at any time, and at the moment he was seriously injured, and it was better to stop talking nonsense, and he asked his friends to take him to the hospital. The disciples immediately began to carry their master, because he could not even move. Fortunately, the friends remained unharmed, and there was no longer a threat to them. Suddenly, someone called the hero, and he decided to answer the call. The caller turned out to be an annoyed tenant because Shuniko Yuire promised to cook dinner for her, but dinner never happened. Forgetting this, he began to jump around like a frog and asked his monkey friend to take care of the bear, explaining that he had some urgent business to attend to. After some time, he jumped to his house and decided to go inside. Turning to the fat housewife, the hero notified her of his arrival and asked for forgiveness for being late. There were many people visiting, and they were all suffering from hunger. In their company, there was another unfamiliar girl who greeted Shuniko Yuire, introducing herself as Jiao Lanting. Among the other guests were Ru Jiang and her boyfriend named Ling Tianxiang. They were the woman's tenants and lived nearby, and she told them that the guy was a great cook and invited them to dinner so that Shuniko Yuire could demonstrate his cooking skills. Expressing confidence in his abilities, the hero added that among so many beautiful girls here, he will do everything at the highest level. With incredibly fast movements of his hands, he began to prepare dinner, preparing dishes at high speed to feed the guests. A few minutes later, he apologized for the delay and, although he wanted to cook more dishes, he didn't have enough ingredients, so he only cooked 20. Having laid out all the food on the table, he wished the guests a bon appetit. Without exception, everyone tried the food and agreed that it was delicious. The hero truly had outstanding culinary skills, and everyone present should have felt happy that they got to enjoy such delicious dishes. One of the girls even thought that Shuniko Yuire's dishes were superior to those she prepared in her restaurant, and thought about recommending the hero to her boss as a chef with a salary of 4,000 or 5,000 a month. The hero rejected this offer, explaining that he had already found a job and would start it in a few days. One of the men noted that the guy had not even attended school and had no formal education, making it difficult to imagine what kind of work he could find other than as a janitor. The girl was surprised that her boyfriend was considered impolite, and even though they both graduated from Shanghai University, they had difficulty finding work in Shanghai. Shuniko Yuire has no formal education, and it is unknown what kind of work he will be able to find, and he believes he will have to choose between roles as a cleaner or a waiter in small restaurants. The woman expressed support for the guy, pointing out that he should not use derogatory words since it was not his fault that he was deprived of formal education. Suddenly, Shuniko Yuire noted that this was really not the best field of activity. All those present came to the conclusion that it is almost impossible to find a job without a quality education, and they learned that many of them spent a lot of time getting hired at Dragon Group, which is by far the best employer in Shanghai. Hearing this, the others were amazed because Dragon Group was considered a prestigious organization. Dragon Group was founded by Longyang Chen, one of the 4 richest men in Shanghai, and is consistently ranked as the top enterprise in the city, making it a dream job for all its graduates. The salary at the company was also quite decent, amounting to about 7,000 yuan per month. The guests were really very interested in the question of Mr. Shuniko Yuire's salary at his new job. The guy immediately admitted that his earnings would not be too high. Upon learning that Shuniko Yuire was guaranteed to receive 10,000 yuan a month, everyone was simply shocked. It was difficult for them to understand how it was possible for a person from a village without education or a diploma to find such a well-paid job. At first, he refused, and they were not going to give him an advance, but he eventually gave his landlady from Tolstoy village 3,000 yuan to pay the rent. The surprised man continued to watch as the guy threw money. The bills fell on the table, ending up not far from the woman. This turn of events shocked the woman, as it seemed simply incredible, and everyone came to the conclusion that Shuniko Yuire really had great power. Suddenly, the man issued a challenge, asking the hero how many glasses he could drink, because he was nicknamed 80 Glasses after he once defeated the Oktoberfest champion. The hero, without hesitation for long, declared that he could drown about 4 glasses in himself. This answer amazed the man, as it seemed funny. It seemed as if the young man did not know how to drink alcohol at all, and after starting work, it seemed that he would have to look for entertainment, because how could he do without a small amount of alcohol? An hour later, there were a lot of bottles of beer on the table. The drunk man shouted that if Shuniko Yuire did not know how to drink, then he had better not drink at all, otherwise he would see the king. Every time he drank, the guy acted like he was a real connoisseur, but then he passed out, and if he didn't know how to drink, he probably shouldn't do it. Ling Tianxiang was overly arrogant and did not listen to the girl's advice, which created problems at the university, and one day Shuniko Yuire also decided to try being drunk. While the girl noticed that her brother drank twice as much as Ling Tianxiang, everything was fine, and it was unclear why he said that he could only drink 4 glasses. But it wasn't a lie, because he misunderstood his goal to stop drinking by raising his middle finger. It was not too late. The hero decided to return home and asked Youngji to take his time, because Fatty would be able to prepare more delicious food. After some time, someone started knocking on the main character's door. Suddenly, the door opened, as it was not even locked. Behind her was Yusi, who came to her savior. The girl immediately wanted to know about her friend's condition, because she shouldn't have left the house for a long time. But she was fine. She felt much better, so she went out for a walk, and she remembered that Shuniko Yuire lived here, and decided to stop by to say hello. One of the cohabitants introduced her tenant and said that he cooked very tasty, and given that Yusi had not eaten, she was invited to come in and have lunch with them. After a while, Yusi was full of delicious food because the food cooked by Shuniko Yuire's older brother was really delicious, and it seemed like he was learning from a chef. He seems to have recently become interested in cooking, although he mainly studied Chinese medicine, and he is the best at curing diseases and saving people, especially girls who faint and only artificial respiration can save them. At that moment, the lady noticed that Yusi was blushing after these words. Together with their mother, they decided that it was time to finish and went to the kitchen. The embarrassed girl at this time wanted to know what happened and what exactly Shuniko Yuire did to her this morning. After thinking a little, the guy decided to ask the student what she was talking about. In the morning, when she lost consciousness on the playground, she wanted to know how she was saved. Shuniko Yuire immediately remembered the girl who fainted, and at the moment of rescue, he didn't care what she looked like, and firstly, the guy apologized. Remembering the student in front of him, the hero decided to share that artificial respiration mostly helped. From the student's reaction, it seemed to him that she wanted to tell him something. Sighing heavily, the girl finally decided to confess. And she said that she wanted to find out the truth about what happened to her. She needs to decide for herself whether she wants to hear the truth or a lie. The falsehood is that she urgently needs to be hospitalized, and perhaps she will be safe. But the truth is that, except him, no one can help her. The lady thought this was absurd because Dr. Xiong helped her last time and may have taken advantage of the opportunity, and she can close her eyes to this but warns him not to try it again, otherwise her father will do something bad. She has already said everything she wanted, so she leaves. Shuniko Yurei must draw his own conclusions. A good-natured classmate wished her a good day and asked her to come again. The girl also loved gossip and decided to find out from her brother what was going on, like some kind of romance. The guy, who did not understand anything, continued to look at the lady and said that he would not gossip with her. Even her mother wanted to know what was going on here. Suddenly, as she was leaving the house, she saw Shuniko Yuire commit an incredible act. Such behavior was unacceptable for a woman, and she took revenge on the one who dared to touch her daughter. With all her might, she hit the guy right in the face and ordered him to forget about this house. This whole thing is really confusing, and it is better to go back to the room and deal with Mao Yushi's questions. Her complexion showed that her condition had improved, and she was probably taking about 30 types of Chinese medicine. Based on this, we can conclude that the use of various drugs does not solve the problem, but only temporarily suppresses the symptoms. And however, as antibodies develop in the body, the effectiveness of the drugs decreases, and this again puts us at a dead end. Unfortunately, the hero had no effective solution and could only wait. Suddenly, someone from the neighboring apartment started screaming, and the guy realized that the neighbors were quarreling. Trying to eavesdrop on the conversation, he learned that the conversation was about Shuniko Yuira, as if he was having an affair with some girl. The man claimed that his girlfriend was having an affair, and he saw her looking at Shuniko Yuire while eating. Because of this, he decided that the girl was cheating on him and punched her forcefully in the face. Voicing that she would no longer be seen by him, he called her a cheater. Shuniko Yuire thought that hitting such a beautiful girl was unacceptable, and the one who did it did not deserve to be called a man. The lady, crying, was amazed at this behavior because she did not expect this from her boyfriend. Because of this, she decided to immediately break up because she dated this scoundrel for 3 years, and he beat her all this time suspecting her of cheating. If she had realized this earlier, she would have left long ago, so there is no point in stopping her. The scoundrel continued to persuade the girl, saying that this happened for the last time, and he will correct himself. Suddenly, several people appeared on the girl's path, noticing her. Unsuspecting, she asked what they were doing here and why they approached her. They didn't want to introduce themselves, believing that it didn't matter who they were. What mattered was that they had met their destiny and invited the girl to come with them. One of them came closer, noticing that the girl was beautiful, but the lady continued to beg them to let go. Outraged, the bully pulled out a knife, saying that he was annoyed by such behavior and warned that she should not seek help from the police. Otherwise, her beautiful face would be mutilated. At this time, her boyfriend turned to one of the hooligans. He gave the money, hoping that it would help free the girl and preserve her integrity. But it is important for this young woman to stay, because they still intend to have a good time in her company, and if the guy does not leave the place, they will give him a lesson in using a knife. In horror, he thought that he couldn't stay here because he had a career, life, and a great future ahead of him, and he shouldn't die here. And he immediately decided to run away, because his life was more valuable to him than a man's honor and dignity. Lino Rujun kept an eye on this scoundrel and expected him to be such a creature. The criminal came up behind her, ready to find out how quickly her boyfriend would escape, and he couldn't be trusted, and she would be better off with her older brother, who treated her more carefully. Suddenly, someone else came up and ordered the scoundrel to let the girl go with his dirty hands. It was Shuniko Yuire who demanded it stop because the lady was horrified and it had to stop. One of the hooligans immediately recognized the scammer who was with him on the bus, and first they wanted to tie up the girl and then punish this guy. Everyone believed that the meeting with Shuniko Yuire would turn out badly, but they still did not know how much power an ordinary guy had. One of the gang members threatened him with a knife, saying that this guy himself came here and humiliated him on the bus, and now he will take his toll. The concerned girl continued to scream about the presence of knives and the need to be careful. Suddenly, the guy recognized the scoundrel who was with him on the bus. Then he punished him really well and humiliated him. Using one of the striking techniques, the hero used the light strike technique. From such a blow, the scoundrel immediately lost his mind and began to rave. At that time, he was already beating the next hooligans so that they would not even think about attacking him from behind. The gang leader watched the guy all this time as he fought and defeated his friends. Then he realized that he had finally met a worthy opponent, and today he was going to play with him. He needed to be sure that Brother Nog would allow him to feel the power of his fists. As it turned out, the gang leader was not so strong and fell after only 3 blows. Fortunately, the bandits retreated, and Shuniko Yuira returned Lino Jujun's wallet, although there was no money in it, as the bandits had stolen it. Realizing this, the guy realized that he was in a hurry and did not have time to collect his money, and he was wondering whether he should spend the whole night in the company, given that Lin Tian was beaten, and he was afraid of a possible conversation on this topic. The embarrassed lady herself offered to stay with her savior. Since she didn't have a place to stay, she asked Shuniko Yuire to spend the night together. Without hesitation, he agreed, and the couple headed to his room, where they planned to rest and the girl could sleep on his bed while he was willing to sleep on the floor. The light in Lady's room was on, indicating that Lin Tian had returned home safely. A little alarmed, the girl asked the guy to wait until she found a public toilet, after which she would return. She wanted to know what Lin Tian was doing and decided to keep an eye on him. Outside the door, she heard the voices of her boyfriend and his boss discussing what was happening in the office and decided to join them in the apartment. There was another woman in the apartment, the boss of the scoundrel. He announced that he left his wife because of an affair with Shuniko Yuire, who lives next door, and allowed her to leave. Now he is ready to devote his life to loving and protecting his boss. Listening to this, the lady realized that she had fallen into this delirium and understood that another unfortunate girl would believe these words. Today, the boss promised to be 100 times better than Xiao Lino Zujun, as she is ready to do anything for her master. Embarrassed by these words, Ling Tian knew that it was time for her to leave, but she didn't care about her ex-boyfriend because she wanted to show that she was happier after the breakup. Opening the door, the girl saw Shuniko Yuire, who had already prepared the tools and wanted to ask her to show her injury. It turned out that the clothing made the wound difficult to see. At this point, the girl decided to take off her clothes to make it easier to treat the wound. The lady was ready to begin, and Shuniko Yuire had a hard time understanding why she was so impulsive. Before starting the procedure, the guy wanted to clarify that he was not a fraudster who took advantage of the opportunity. For this reason, he suggested that he start by putting on clothes, since he was able to roughly remember where his wound was. After an hour of treatment, Lady felt much better, and he could now remove his hands. But he should wait a minute, as this is the last stage of the massage, helping to improve blood circulation and reduce swelling. This was confirmed when she looked in the mirror and saw that the treatment had indeed worked, and the wound had almost disappeared. The patient also did well, and people usually remain scared for a long time. But at the same time, her figure turned out to be incredibly attractive. Because of the size of the bed, they could lie together, as lying on the floor would be harmful. The girl stayed in his room, and Shuniko Yuire was grateful for such trust, and that is why he did not pay attention to the fact that they would sleep together. Lying on the bed, he felt that he was already a good person for Lino Jujun. But in this situation, he, being a gentleman, could not do anything about it. Taking advantage of people's weaknesses would be wrong, let alone going to school tomorrow, since the guy had sealed his inner strength. Sometime later, events unfolded the next day. Waking up, Lino Zhu-jun was thinking about the need to find a new place to live and rent an apartment. Going out into the entrance of her house, the girl discovered her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. The ex-boyfriend was curious why Lino Rujun left Shuniko Yuire's apartment. After all, they recently broke up and the girl moved in with her new boyfriend, so the couple wanted to know what they were doing that night. Despite the storm of feelings, the ex-boyfriend was now enjoying his relationship with Xiao Lian, and they thanked Lino Rujun for it. Suddenly, someone hugged Lino Rujun from behind. It was Shuniko Yuire who expressed his gratitude to Ling Tian, declaring that thanks to their separation, he had met such a wonderful girl, and their affairs should not bother the couple. The couple obviously did not expect such a turn, and they hurried to leave. The girl was grateful to the guy who, as it turned out, saved her, and it turned out that he needed to visit the school hospital today, which is why he dressed so smartly. The situation was very urgent, and he asked not to take it too seriously, after which he headed to school. At that time, Lino Rujun realized that it would be great if Shuniko Yuire's brother took this seriously. Sometime later, upon arriving at school, Shuniko Yuire received threats from the principal, who warned that if within 3 months his previously demonstrated medical skills were found to be faulty, he would be immediately suspended. There were only 3 doctors studying Chinese medicine at the school, and Shuniko Yuire didn't want to cause problems, considering that the girl was very busy at the time. When she turned around, the guy was no longer behind. It turned out that he had met a friend of his, who also worked at this school, and Shuniko Yuire had just applied for a position as a doctor in the Chinese medicine department, and they could become colleagues. Shangguan Chanyun was soon finishing up work and invited the guy to lunch, suggesting they meet at noon. The guy agreed, and they were going to meet at noon. Chu Hongshin became jealous as it only took her a few days to seduce the girl. The hero honestly stated that there was nothing between them, and he was devoted only to his wife, but she did not want to be called his wife. Then she pointed to the school hospital and said that the Chinese medicine department was on the top floor. Entering the hospital, the guy noticed that there were many beauties here, and this confirmed the need to strengthen the school. In the hallway, Shuniko Yuire noticed the doctor he talked about earlier, who warned the girl about an endocrine disorder, and he immediately realized that this doctor was inexperienced. Coming closer, the experienced doctor declared that this was not an endocrine disorder. If he is right, then the student is pregnant. The doctor from the school told the guy that he was inexperienced and was not a therapist like him. This was true since Shuniko Yuire was a doctor of Chinese medicine. Annoyed, the man assumed that the guy was an intern and had forgotten about his duties in the Chinese medicine department. The inexperienced man continued to say that people like him had become bored, and they were diagnosing just anyone. The hero made the final decision based on his experience. If her condition does not improve, the patient should contact the Chinese medicine department and look for a doctor named Shuniko Yuire. The doctor insisted that the patient not listen to this guy and take medications according to his diagnosis. Rising to the top floor, the guy noticed the Department of Chinese Medicine, and it is not surprising that it was so quiet here, because this department was looked down upon. Entering the office and looking around, the guy asked if there was anyone here. And indeed, there was someone, and one of the doctors was hiding behind a barrier and was not visible. The man's name was Xin Guang. He was the head physician of the Chinese medicine department, and it was quite empty here, and the young man should prepare himself for loneliness. The guy assured the man that treating and saving people was his priority, not earning money. It turned out that the elderly man continued to work here. Precisely because of this logic, he wanted to help people. The department must be really busy today, even though patients usually come in once every 6 months. Someone knocked on the door, and the guy guessed that it was probably the same girl from the corridor. It turned out to be her, and the girl was looking for a doctor named Shuniko Yuire. The surprised man exclaimed that Shuniko Yuire is not so bad if the students came looking for him already on the first day, and he is inside, so the girls can enter the office. The students were alarmed and wanted to know what the doctor told them in his office that time. The smart hero immediately guessed that the girls wanted to find out if it was true that one of them was pregnant. Leaning lightly on the back of her chair, Shuniko Yuira replied that she believed that her own body knew better about this. If she believes Dr. Lee, then there's no point in coming to her. That's why Dr. Xiong can't help her. The alarmed student nevertheless decided to share her problem, talking about constant extreme fatigue. Her friend, in turn, thought that this doctor was probably playing with them. Then the students decided to leave, believing that the doctor was not competent, and the guy understood that it was best to do everything in a big way in order to improve the reputation of the department. 15 minutes later, one of the hospital employees reported that Shuniko Yuire received his first complaint on his first day of work and was fined 1,000 yuan for the first violation. In addition, he will have to apologize to the applicant personally and sign the relevant documents. Puzzled, the doctor began to make excuses, asking Director Chin why he was being punished without being listened to. The director did not care at all about the doctor's fate, since the complaint was filed with the patients and her word was more important. Observing the situation, Shuniko Yuira realized that the director was unpredictable, and he seemed to be used to it. The guy immediately said that he could complain about her unclear beliefs and arbitrary punishments. The doctor's behavior really surprised the girl because she did not expect that such a person could complain about her. Getting up from her workplace, the girl began to prove that someone had filed a complaint against him and she should punish him for it. Besides, even if she made a mistake in something, he has no right to do anything to her, since her sister is the headmaster of the school. Having asked to wait, the guy admitted that he might not complain, but it was better to discuss everything calmly. Taking something out of his pocket, Shuniko Yuire prepared something for the girl. It turned out to be a prescription for medicine, since the director was ill and needed it. This argument angered the lady even more, and she wanted to know what exactly her colleague was sick with, believing that it was the doctor who was sick because he was making hasty conclusions. However, then she saw that the doctor was speaking quite seriously that this disease was very serious. Suddenly, the director began to feel pain in her chest, and she did not understand what was happening to her. The disease seems to have progressed. Constantly being angry made her heart weaken, and he wasn't going to argue with her to prevent it from getting worse. He also didn't want to stimulate her illness by offering her this recipe. Supporting the girl in his arms, the guy realized that she was sick, and it was necessary to use 5 silver needles to save her. The arrogant doctor and a girl he knew immediately saw the director faint and wanted to figure out what happened. Qianyun actually arrived on time, and Shuniko Yuire asked her to bring his bag from the Chinese medicine department. The embittered doctor again saw the same intern from the Chinese department and ordered him to leave so that he could take care of Liang himself. The main character did not like this approach, and he ordered the man to remain calm. Because the patient's life was in danger, she fell into a coma, and any interference could result in her death. At this time, entering the department, the nurse wanted to know where the brother kept his bag. Continuing her search, she realized that she could not find her quickly. But, fortunately, she still managed to successfully find the bag, although something fell out of it. It turned out to be a bra, and it looks like it has been used multiple times. The embarrassed nurse nevertheless brought the bag to her brother, as he asked. Turning to the girl, the doctor noticed that his nurse was blushing, but she only said that it was from running. All this time, the girl thought that her brother did not look like a pervert stealing underwear, so she had to find the right moment to ask him about it. Due to the deterioration of the patient's condition, Shuniko Yuire must hurry. The doctor watched the process without leaving, as the intern held a huge needle right in front of the director. This time, Shuniko Yuire took an even larger needle and was about to use it. This is just an acupuncture procedure, and if the doctor wants to express his gratitude, he can leave a gift at the Chinese medicine department. The patient's treatment is always like this, and there is no need to worry. She should come to her senses soon, and although she is easy to anger, her body is really excellent. When she woke up, the woman immediately wanted to find out who saved her. The doctor explained that she had fainted, her body was weak, and she should not move. Due to severe chest pain, the girl wanted to go home and rest. Meanwhile, Shuniko Yuire realized that the director should have come to her senses by now, and he didn't know if this situation could change people's views on the Chinese medicine department. Unfortunately, the path to success is full of obstacles, and it would be better for him to meet Qianyun to eat. Suddenly, another student approached and immediately recognized Shuniko Yuire. It was a girl from the sorority house, and she had heard that the doctor worked at the school hospital, so she decided to come. But her body has not yet fully recovered, so she needs to go to the Chinese medicine department. Arriving at the department, the doctor began to measure her pulse on her arm. The worried guy realized that this girl smokes, drinks, and goes to bed late, clearly deteriorating her health. But looking at her appearance, he couldn't even imagine this, so he wanted to ask a few questions. And he asked directly, why does she smoke, drink, and go to bed late? Sighing heavily, the student admitted that his medical skills were impressive, and she could not hide it from the doctor. She has worked as a waitress for the past 2 years. She thought about quitting, but had to continue for 2 reasons. First, her boyfriend's family was poor, and she gave him most of the money she earned. However, she did not expect that he would lie to her and spend money on other girls, and decided to leave him. Then the guy showed up at the hostel, disguised himself as a girl, and almost stabbed her. Despite resolving the problem, the doctor could not understand why the girl resorted to drinking alcohol. The second reason is due to the fact that she is a member of the Hailong Tea House. Every time she thinks about leaving, she is threatened because the influence of the Hailong Tea House is too great, and she is forced to endure in silence. These memories made the girl cry, and all this tormented her heart for a long time, and she thanked the doctor for his support and understanding. Luckily, the doctor gave her a prescription, and she now needs to rest for half a month and then return to take her exams. Meanwhile, the guy realized that the Hailong Tea House was involved in many negative events in the city. Shangguan Chenyun arrived and invited the hero to go to dinner together. The benevolent girl did not mind if the hero invited his friends. There were many different restaurants in the city, and they could choose any one, but Shuniko Yuire did not know the area very well and relied on Chenyun. There was a restaurant nearby that was famous for its delicious fried fish, and they were all planning to go there together. At this time, friends were discussing their problem of the lack of beautiful girls in their lives. They are glad that they remained friends for life, despite the different fields of their work. One is a vegetable seller, and the other is a butcher. There were a lot of girls from the university campus in the restaurant. Hanayo's fish restaurant was very popular and was frequented by students. Since it was their first time here, they asked the girl to order first. Another familiar girl named Feiyu, who recognized the doctor, came up and greeted him. She apologized for the incident this morning and explained why she couldn't stop her friend Han Ying from filing a complaint. The hero invited Fei to sit with them, but she refused because she came with a guy. The couple sat nearby, and a joyful Fei introduced their new friends to the guy. It turned out that this was the same taekwondo coach, and he was clearly unhappy, refusing to greet Shuniko Yuire. The girl was surprised that they already knew each other, and earlier they had a small duel with each other. The doctor did not want to disturb his patient unnecessarily and planned to discuss her condition later. The girl immediately realized that this guy was a taekwondo teacher on their campus, and she wanted to know why they didn't communicate. Friends said that they had fought earlier, and Shuniko Yuire won the fight. This was unexpected for everyone, but the hero did not admit it, saying that he was just a beginner in martial arts. Friends recalled that Shuniko Yuire promised to teach them martial arts. And after their friend taught them, they promised not to make fun of the taekwondo coach. At this time, the girl was trying to calm her boyfriend down, and he wanted to figure out what Shuniko Yuire's expression meant, that he wanted to talk to the girl about her body. Despite Ping Tong's bad mood, she still decided to tell him and admitted that the doctor told her about the unexpected news. The upset student admitted that she was pregnant. The guy got even more angry because he couldn't understand how she could get pregnant, considering that every time they're intimate, they use contraception. Suddenly, the guy stopped laughing and said that he understood something. And he realized that he and Shuniko Yuire were conspiring to take revenge on him. That is why the embarrassed guy assumed that the father of the child was Shuniko Yuire himself. Taking out his wallet, he offered the girl 2,000 yuan, asking if she was willing to provide services for money. However, then he threw his wallet in her direction and shouted that they had been dating for a whole year, and she didn't care. This event made the girl even more angry because she could not understand why her boyfriend was reacting this way. The next moment, a needle flew out of nowhere. And before the wallet landed on the girl's face, she grabbed it with a needle and pinned it to the wall. The stunned couple watched as the wallet was pinned to the wall with a needle. All because of a loser named Ping Tongse, who committed inappropriate acts by raising his hand against his girlfriend. Enraged, Ping shouted at Shuniko Yuire, warning him not to interfere in other people's affairs. Due to lack of time to explain, he immediately decided to leave. The hero decided to make a bet. If the scoundrel loses, he will have to apologize to Fei Yu. In case of defeat, the main character undertakes to become the villain's slave for a whole month. If he wins, the guy will become a slave for a month and obey all his instructions. They agreed to bet on whether the black bear could defeat the villain in 3 months. The impudent man knew that Shuniko Yuire had 2 subordinates, but they were unable to cope with him. And yet he accepted the challenge, eagerly waiting for this moment to see what he could do with this garbage in 3 months. Friends immediately began to discuss rumors that Bear was beaten by him on the sports field. But there is no need to worry, because if he trains hard, 2 months will be enough for him. Mastering martial arts, Bear can easily win a girl, because these classes will help him build muscles, and everyone around him already wants to join in the training. The angry scoundrel just wanted to see how he would deal with his rival in 3 months, and the black bear had to train hard to face this scoundrel. Approaching closer to the girl, Shuniko Yuire sought to make sure that Fei Yu was really okay, and the girl, in turn, expressed gratitude to the savior. Then she said that she wanted to make sure she was pregnant, and if so, she might have to have an abortion. As it turned out, the doctor has safer methods, and there is no need to resort to abortion in this situation. The thoughtful girl still wanted to carefully consider her decision before taking such serious steps. The bear, seeing the girl, immediately felt a desire to get to know her, despite the fact that she was a patient of his best friend. It turned out that the last time Bear was beaten by Ping Tongse was because of Fei Yu, and everyone immediately guessed that Bear really liked the girl very much. Despite all the circumstances, Shuniko Yuire asked his friend to pay the bill for food, and he himself promised to provide an opportunity for them to get to know each other. The total amount of damage was 2,400 yuan, and Bear decided to cover all expenses. While the monkey said that Shuniko Yuire is a pervert, and since childhood he loves to play with girls, receiving encouragement from his grandfather. In an instant, the hero hit his friend on the head and asked the girl to ignore his nonsense, explaining that all his life he had always been a good guy. But Bear continued his story, claiming that at the age of 10, he fell in love with a beautiful widow from their village, watching her while bathing, and even kissed her on the lips when she fell asleep. The stunned girl was amazed by what she heard and became frightened. It turned out that Wang, who they all thought was a widow, was a young girl who was raised by an old man in their village, and when she was only 12 years old, the old man died, and she was always called a widow. Then he kissed her because she was about to leave alone, and he wanted to keep the memories of her, and the villagers mistakenly believed that she was married, and he had not seen her for 10 years. Still, her friends insisted that fate was involved in their meeting, but Shuniko Yurei preferred not to overthink things, and she was going to join her friends in the Chinese medicine department to teach them a few basic skills. The bear, in turn, realized that the time had come to do something, despite the fact that there were only 3 months left before the battle. Throughout this entire period, the boss hid behind a screen, preferring to remain unnoticed. She literally begged the staff in the future to notify her every time they came. It turned out that the woman was Vaughn's widow, and her eyes found it hard to believe that she had met Shuniko Yuire by chance, as if their fates were intertwined. After some time, they mastered the basic techniques, and when the bear mastered the martial arts, his efforts would be crowned with double success. This time, the friends finally decided to trust him and face an experienced fighter. Both training buddies committed to at least 40 minutes each day to begin seeing results by stretching on the pole within a week. At that time, the hero realized that he should not blame himself, because this whole situation arose because of them. Suddenly, Chu Hongshin called Shuniko Yuire. The hero's friends already felt their muscles gradually increasing in strength. Hoping that his girlfriend had changed her mind and was ready to marry him, he answered the call. But that didn't happen, and she didn't have time to argue, so she asked for the truth about what happened between him and Chin Li that morning. Manager Chin had some lifestyle and health problems, and in addition, the director had something that the doctor had not yet revealed. In the afternoon, Dr. Miao Ren invited Shuniko Yuire to dinner, and Chu Hongshin asked him to join. This girl really has beauty, but unfortunately, she is already engaged to Chu Hongshin. With a heavy sigh, the guy reflected on the fact that his grandfather wanted him to marry such a ruthless woman. In fact, the engagement was called off, and he now works as a doctor at the university hospital. Suddenly, someone came up from behind, and the doctors were recognized. It turned out to be Miao Zhen, who immediately recognized the guy and congratulated him on being hired at the university hospital. They will become colleagues in the future. The girl was sure that in less than 2 months, he would become a famous doctor in this hospital. But the hero was not interested in this, and he wanted to know where they would go for dinner. Chu Hongshin booked them a place at a grilled fish restaurant. It was about Chio's fish restaurant, where the director had reserved a table for them. Even though the hero preferred the grill, he didn't mind visiting again, especially in the company of such an attractive woman. Suddenly, Shuniko Yurei noticed something very strange. It turned out that the director planned to invite someone else to the meeting so that everyone could meet together. The thoughtful doctor decided to ask the director why she disliked Shuniko Yuira, despite the fact that their families knew each other. This was due to the fact that the girl was simply not used to such dishonest behavior, so she felt antipathy towards him. At this time, walking along one of the streets, Shuniko Yurei sneezed and felt that someone was thinking about him. Suddenly, a certain girl approached him from behind and recognized the doctor. She was sincerely happy about this random encounter, while the restless doctor decided to find out where the girl was going. The patient's face became paler every day, and the doctor advised her to quit her job as soon as possible. Luckily, Qianlin announced that the doctor didn't have to worry about her, since she was going to quit today. However, in order to be released, she will first have to pay, and then she can safely leave. Due to her haste, the girl began to speed up her steps, and Shuniko Yurei warned her to be careful. Namely, Qianlin goes along with those with whom the guy had previously met in fights. Understanding everything that was happening, he just thought that he should forget about it because she should be fine, and it was better to go to the restaurant first. All this time, Shuniko Yurei was asking Miao Ren whether Chu Hongshin wanted to make peace with him, but she was waiting in the front room, and if he hurried, he could find out about it himself. Walking into that room, the hero took a flower with him, hoping to find out from the director what she thought about their relationship. He also apologized to the girl he kept waiting for so long. Unfortunately, something happened that the guy did not expect at all. Along with the girl was Long, who was planning to marry her. Everyone sat at the table and knew each other, so there was no need to be so careful. The doctor tried to maintain a dialogue, but she understood that the atmosphere here was not the best, although she knew that she would break the silence anyway. And she decided to go straight to Chu Hongshin, asking why Director Long was invited here, even though he is such a busy man. Booking this VIP room is usually not that easy. It usually takes several weeks to get on the waiting list. Thanks to Mr. Long and his connections, they now have the opportunity to take advantage of it. Long wanted to ask the doctor if she liked the food and added that he would do his best to make a good impression on Chu Hongshin. The food was truly delicious, and Shuniko Yurei had already eaten half of it. Watching what was happening, Long knew that a person like him had probably never been to such places, and so he was going to humiliate him in front of Chu Hongshin, thinking that it should be funny. Then he invited the guy to take all these dishes if he liked them so much. Shuniko Yurei did not object, so he put all the food in the bag and was extremely happy. The irritated girl wanted to find out from the guy what he was doing and why he was acting so unceremoniously. Shuniko Yurei asked not to blame him, explaining that he gave his last 3,000 yuan to his landlord and now has no money for food. A little later, he began to cry, asking Chu Hongshin if she could give him money, because if she didn't help, he might die of hunger. The puzzled girl wanted to understand how a doctor could live in a room of 30 square meters, but the guy only added that such housing was still acceptable for one person. Rich Long only noticed that people turn out to be poor for a reason, but, for example, because of laziness. Booking this VIP room is usually not so easy, and you often have to wait in line for several weeks. Thanks to Mr. Long and his connections, they have the opportunity to take advantage of it at this time. Long was interested in the doctor's opinion about food and assured that he would do everything possible to make Chu Hongshin happy. The food turned out to be really tasty, and Shuniko Yurei had already finished half of it. Watching what was happening, Long understood that Yurei, despite all his efforts, was not able to make a good match with Chu Hongshin, and decided to give in. Surprised by this statement, Shuniko Yurei asked Long to repeat his words, not believing that such things were being said to him. Without hesitation, Long confirmed his words, declaring that he truly had feelings for Chu Hongshin. Approaching Long, Shuniko Yurei felt that he had been lying all this time. Listening to the dialogue, Chu Hongshin realized that Long, despite his high status as a general director, could not adequately respond to the remarks of such a simple person as Shuniko Yurei. Deciding to wish everyone a bon appetit, Shuniko Yurei went to get drinks. Walking down the corridor, he intended to take milk for Hongshin and yogurt for Miao Ren. But suddenly, I heard a familiar voice talking about how some girl seemed to have finally gotten drunk. Those same scoundrels appeared, and next to them, a girl who loudly declared that she had already drunk enough and wanted to quit. The villains plotted terrible things with the girl, treating her as an object. Suddenly, Shuniko Yurei appeared, who was glad to meet these scoundrels. Thus, he decided to punish them again, realizing that they were making his patients feel bad. Literally a minute later, all the villains were defeated, and the hero kicked them out of the room where they were mocking the girl. Fortunately, he helped her in time, otherwise it might have been too late. Suddenly, the girl began to approach the doctor from behind, recognizing him. She thanked him and offered her services as a token of gratitude. The stunned doctor asked her to behave normally, given her condition after drinking alcohol. As it turned out, the girl was almost sober, as she had only drunk a bottle of beer. The doctor was the only one who treated her well, while the others tried to deceive her, and the villains even mixed drugs in her drink. Understanding the complexity of the situation, Shuniko Yuire realized that if the girl continued to behave like this, he would lose control. Continuing to hold the girl in his arms, he apologized to her. Picking Lady up in his arms, he explained that these 2 needles would help her fall asleep for a while and remove the alcohol from her blood. It was decided to take her to the VIP room so that she could come to her senses. Sometime later, events developed in the VIP room. The girls recognized their student who, having drunk more than usual, soon lost consciousness. The hero decided to say that he caught the girl when she was being bullied by 2 people and saved her. But Chu Hongshin did not appreciate this act, claiming that he just wanted to take advantage of the situation. Since the director doubted his sincerity, she could interrogate the girl herself as soon as she came to her senses. After a few minutes, the worried girl finally woke up with a severe headache. Chu Hongshin immediately asked the student if Shuniko Yuire had given her anything to drink. Suddenly, the girl rushed to hug the doctor, shouting that it was good that he was here, because if it weren't for him, her life could have ended. Events took place not far from the restaurant where the heroes were. An unknown, brutal man was heading there. Once in front of him, Mr. Da Xiong, they complained to him, claiming that Shuniko Yuire beat them and took the girl away from the karaoke room. The gang leader ordered his subordinates to beat the hero as much as possible. Meanwhile, Shuniko Yuire decided to go outside, and the bandits immediately noticed this. One of the scoundrels pointed his finger at him, saying that this was the same scoundrel that the boss was going to deal with. Swinging a baseball bat, the scoundrel was ready to strike the main character with a strong blow right on the head. Suddenly, Shuniko Yuire decided to bend down to pick up something from the ground, and the blow landed on the person walking behind him. This blow accidentally fell to Long, and Shuniko Yuire was a real lucky one, as he found 1 yuan on the ground. The boss of the bullies immediately recognized Long. They knew each other, and Long was his boss. The scoundrel began to make excuses, claiming that he accidentally hit Long and did not intend to fight him. It was a misunderstanding, as many people were behind the scoundrel, and Long thought it was an attempt on his life. Shuniko Yuire also pointed out the scoundrel who was forcing the student to do this work and demanded that Chu Hongshin do something. The gentleman suggested that it was Shin and Long's problem, and suggested drawing up a contract between them and the student. Now Long has burned the contract and banned the bully from seeing the student. Now the girl was safe, she thanked Shuniko Yuire again, although he reminded her that the gratitude should be addressed to Mr. Long. Chu Hongshin at this time was thinking that her boyfriend was not as bad as she thought. Perhaps she was mistaken in her judgment about him. Sometime later, Long began to leave, but the situation had not yet been fully resolved. The scoundrel decided to stop the main character, saying that he couldn't just leave. Suddenly, the bully realized that Shuniko Yuire was very angry about something. He was angry because he dropped the bag of his food. Looking at the scoundrel as if he were a wild animal, Shuniko Yuire declared that he had ruined the entire month's supply of food. The atmosphere became very tense, and it was difficult for the scoundrel to speak out. Despite the apology, Shuniko Yuire hit him on the head with all his might because an apology was inappropriate here. Under such a blow, the criminal fell to his knees, and the ground shook under him. Now the impudent one better not move, since his bones are broken. This is the punishment for trying to encroach on the hero's food, and as a great boss, you should show respect and not touch the fruits of other people's labor. From that day on, the boss never wanted to remember what happened and forbade everyone to discuss it. Finding his glasses, he was still shaking with fear, and his only desire was to get out of there. The hooligans began to lift their boss as all his bones were broken. Meanwhile, Miao Ren and Shuniko Yuire were returning from the restaurant, and the hero said that his house was about 30 kilometers away, and so they asked Chu Hongshin to give them a ride. Long invited Chu Hongshin to stay with him for the night, as he would be worried if she went home with her friends. The indifferent girl replied that he should mind his own business, and she would contact him later. After hearing this answer, Long began to think that Chu Hongshin Corporation had achieved success and began to boast. And however, it was worth waiting until their companies merged into one, and he would teach her a lesson. Chu Hongshin received a Rolls-Royce car as a gift from her mother. Everyone admired this car because it was incredibly beautiful. The cost of such a car was at least 500,000 yuan, and the girl's family was known to have incredible wealth. Miao Zheng noticed that the doctor was wrong and was making jokes, and this car was a limited edition Bentley from last year, with only 20 cars produced worldwide. Currently, the price of the said car is between 7 and 8 million yuan. His limited financial situation seriously affected his perception of reality, and he had difficulty accepting the idea that a car could cost that much. While the hero would agree to the girl's generous offer of 100 million yuan in exchange for his consent, which would make him rich. However, the guy did not want this option at all, since his preference was given to beauty and talent, and he was sure that even with such a sum, he would not have become happier. The worried girl assured him that there was no need to worry, as their wedding would not happen. The narrow alley provided them with only one option for transportation: pedestrian. After some time, they found themselves near the house of Shuniko Yurei. Everyone was amazed at the terrible conditions in which the doctor lived. Suddenly, the director noticed something attached to the wall. It turned out to be an advertisement with fascinating content that made the girl blush. She could not look at such images and walked past the wall. Thus, Shuniko Yurei invited the girls inside, explaining that this was his house. Suddenly, someone appeared in the bathroom and began talking to the hero, telling him that the renovations in her apartment had not yet been completed, so she could not move. This was because Shuniko Yurei forgot that Lino Zhu-jun was currently living at his home. Leaving the bathroom, the girl said that today she wanted to spend the night in his room. When she came out in a robe, everyone present was amazed. The alarmed girl wanted to figure out who all these people were. Meanwhile, Chu Hongshin began to insist on answers from the guy, demanding an explanation about who this girl was, because they had a wedding coming up, and he could not even identify her. Unable to bear this, the girl decided to tell everything to her grandfather. Lino Zhu-jun, in turn, realized her guilt in this situation, but the guy did not blame her and was going to explain the whole situation later. Suddenly, a student approached the doctor, expressing her faith in him, and the hero was truly amazed that she decided to stay. Fortunately, the hero decided to take the student to the dormitory since it was already dark and it was unsafe to go alone. Going out into the street, the hero and the student noticed a drunken couple. The man immediately saw the waitress from the restaurant and told Dr. Shuniko Yuira that he was truly lucky, because he said he looked at him and saw that he had won the heart of the waitress, which looked very ridiculous. The student also recognized him, saying that he often visits their restaurant. He goes there often and even developed a good relationship with a girl named Ju Hua, and she heard that every time he shows up at the restaurant, they go out together for the night, although she doesn't know what they do there. His partner really needs to be careful, as he is known for his frivolous hobbies and can get into trouble. The frustrated man ran after his girlfriend, realizing that she no longer wanted to listen to his chatter and realizing that the relationship was over. The door was closed in front of him, and his girlfriend clearly did not want to see him. Suddenly, Lino Rujun opened the door, thinking that the doctor had already returned. But it turned out to be her ex, and she immediately closed the door in front of him. And again, the door swung open, and the girl even decided to express her dissatisfaction with the insidious guy by spitting in his face so that he would understand that such behavior is not acceptable. The enraged man instantly realized that Dr. Shuniko Yurei was to blame for this situation. Sometime later, the student and the doctor reached the school. Today, her contract was terminated, so she will no longer have to work in a restaurant. And now she needs to rest more, take care of herself, not drink alcohol, and not smoke. The girl was grateful and realized what the doctor did for her to help. She thanked him sincerely, even though he was her patient, and such actions were part of his duties. Meanwhile, the girl discovered someone's hand sticking out of the bushes. With horror, they discovered that there was a man in the bushes. The worried young woman was tempted to call the police, claiming that she felt as if the man had lost his life. It turned out that it was Yang Fei, surrounded by several bottles of wine, and she was lying directly on the roadway at a very late hour. The girl, who studied at the same school as the student, allegedly drowned in alcohol until she lost consciousness. The doctor was still eager to help the patient and decided to perform acupuncture to wake her up. After the acupuncture procedure, the girl instantly woke up, starting to scream from acute pain. The surprised lady realized that they had done the same procedure for her to awaken. And this is true, but the doctor used only 2 needles. Fortunately, the young lady quickly came to her senses and began to gradually recover. She apologized for doubting the hero, as it turned out that he was right, she was pregnant. Bursting into tears, she exclaimed that she wanted the doctor to help her have an abortion. Reflecting on everything that was happening, the student realized that perhaps the doctor was the father of the child. However, the lady also understood that he was the director's fiancé and they were engaged. Shuniko Yurei, meanwhile, was talking with the patient, claiming that she was taking poor care of herself and drinking during pregnancy, and the girl decided to have an abortion, because whether she drank or not didn't matter anymore. She just wanted to forget about her problems. The girl also hated the father of her child and left him because of her school status, not wanting to leave the child. The guy, wiping the girl's tears, asked if she wanted revenge. If the doctor helps her, she is even ready to pay him. However, her ex-boyfriend's father is the vice president of the public security department and is very influential. Since the girl's desire is so strong, there shouldn't be any problems, and if she remembers, she has a friend who is going to defeat her ex. There is no need to worry because your friend is actively training, and if the girl supports him, it will be much better. After this, the heroes decided to ask their friend how his training was going and whether there was any success. They are constantly improving their skills, and Shuniko Yurei can be sure that this will help them defeat the scoundrel. Suddenly, our hero handed the girl a smartphone, inviting her to invite the bear to dinner. In response, she unexpectedly stated that she had already sent an invitation and urgently asked him to defeat her ex. The guy in love agreed without hesitation, ready to make any effort for such a beautiful girl. Putting his friend aside, he continued his training, striving to become even stronger. Turning to Fei Yu, he assured her that in 3 months, her ex would be easily defeated. Due to this, the scoundrel will be on his knees, apologizing to everyone. The power of love turns out to be truly powerful, and the bear makes every effort, and if he can win, then the girl should not forget about inviting him to dinner. Tired, Shuniko Yurei nevertheless decides to return home to get some rest, meeting with the heroine again in the afternoon the next day. Having recently returned to the city, he has already faced a huge number of problems. And yet, the words of his grandfather are confirmed by the men in their family always solving not only their own problems. Suddenly realizing that he returned a few days ago and has not yet begun to practice martial arts, our hero decides that now is the time to begin this process. At this time, a girl walked by, thinking about her uselessness, since she had to work until late just to feed herself and her children. And then suddenly, clothes appeared in front of her, hanging nearby. It looked like it belonged to a doctor, and the girl decided to take it home. Nearby was not only this clothing, but also others. There were a lot of different things scattered all over the floor. The surprised girl began to wonder why the doctor had scattered his things here. Picking up all the objects, she realized that she needed to return them to their place. Suddenly, Shuniko Yuire asked her not to move. Events unfolded the next day, and clothes were scattered everywhere. The toad looked at the phone from which Grandpa Chu was calling. A sleepy Shuniko Yuire answered his grandfather, wanting to know the reason for the call. It turned out that he wanted to have dinner with his grandson at his home. The hero didn't mind and assured that they would meet in the evening. When he woke up, he saw Xiaolan Ting lying next to him, which truly surprised him. As he reflected on the night before, he realized that he had headed into the forest for martial arts training. They practiced together with the chicken, but then the sounds of footsteps disturbed the peace, and it became clear that a person was approaching. Turning around, the hero saw that it was Xiaolan Ting. His training partners began to feel ill. Grandfather said that during intense training, there should be no distractions, otherwise things could get out of control. Distracted, the guy lost control of the chicken and the situation got out of control. So the chicken went into mega mode, and that was the end for everyone. After the girl found out the whole truth, she was shocked because all the details of the conversation became clear. Initially, the lady had difficulty accepting the information, doubting that she was worthy of attention. But what happened was a fact, and despite the girl's intention to return to everyday life and work, the conversation remained in her memory. All the years, the main character kept his innocence, and despite the difficulties, he managed to fulfill the last request of his grandfather. When the guy touched his face, he noticed something new. With joy, he realized that now his face was not subject to paralysis, and he was able to express his emotions. Smiling, he realized that even his grandfather could not cure him. Perhaps it had something to do with that night. Suddenly, students approached him, whom the doctor asked to come the next day, all because the doctor invited them the next day. The good-natured doctor asked the students to come into his office, and he began performing acupuncture procedures, assuring them that they would not feel pain. The girl was amazed why she needed to undress for the procedure, but Shuniko Yuire assured that he would close his eyes and not see anything. The doctor was truly amazing, able to treat even with his eyes closed, which seemed incredible. Despite the holes in the bandage through which the doctor could see, he was absolutely in control. Laughing, the guy admitted that he acted on purpose, but the girls realized that it was a joke. The next moment, he turned to rectify the situation while working on his mask. The bandage now completely covered his eyes, and the doctor began the procedure. After 30 minutes, the procedure was completed. The girl felt very weak and needed rest so as not to disturb her. Shuniko Yuire prepared to go home to Chu, asking his friend to take care of the girl. The lady had no faith in his abilities until she saw everything with her own eyes. Some time passed and events unfolded in Chu's house. Last time there were many guests here. Perhaps some special event is being prepared now. The hero came to a huge palace, even decorated with a helicopter, and the building was a real magnificent architectural masterpiece that probably cost millions of yuan. This time the car did not take him and his grandfather to the main hall, and relations with the guests seemed less warm than before. Walking the path turned out to be difficult, and Shuniko Yuire realized that everything was much more difficult than it seemed. Noticing the fire extinguisher, he thought how strange it was that it was there. When he noticed the fire extinguisher, he had an idea. Grandfather watched him all this time and said that Shuniko Yuire still managed to surprise him. Despite the difficulties, the hero remained calm and his grandfather chose him correctly. This guy is going to be really successful soon. However, Shin does not believe this, and today she intends to call off the engagement, and she will probably have to regret it in the future. Chu Hongshin's father told his grandfather that they had discussed the situation and he couldn't break his promise because his daughter was threatening to commit suicide if he forced her to marry this guy. Grandfather only replied that he was aware and was going to meet his guest. A few minutes later, the main character was already at the main entrance, where the adults ordered him to get off the fire extinguisher. With a pathetic expression, the hero descended and headed forward on foot, and the fire extinguisher, having flown into the wall, stopped with amazing speed. The elderly man was delighted with the appearance of such a guest and prepared many delicious treats for him. A good-natured and wealthy man invited the guest to come in and enjoy any dish from the offered assortment. The astute guy immediately realized that his grandfather's invitation was important for more than just dinner. This is indeed the case, since grandfather wanted Shuniko Yuire and Chu Hongshin to get married, and this decision was the result of his joint thoughts with grandfather, and the moment when they promised each other brotherly support, and also tried to court grandmother, became part of this unusual story, and as a result, Ashin became the wife of Shuniko Yuire. 25 years ago, Ashin's grandmother died due to an accident, and her death tragically coincided with the birth of Ashin in the same year. And the grandfather believed that he was somehow to blame for what happened, and as a sign of compensation, they decided that in the future, the relationship between Shuniko Yuire and Ashin would be sealed with an engagement. The hero was clearly aware of all these nuances, but knew that Chu Hongshin wanted to cancel the wedding. The girl's mother also did not consider Shuniko Yuire worthy of her daughter, viewing this marriage as purely unprofitable for the family. Together with her husband, they decided to write a check to Shuniko Yuire as compensation. According to the terms, if he agreed to end the engagement for 200 million, then that amount would be his. An offer that was undoubtedly tempting, considering that Shuniko Yuire would probably never earn that kind of money in her lifetime. The idea of a check for 200 million really sounded very attractive, and the guy even thought about agreeing. An extensive paperwork was also prepared for the signature of Shuniko Yuire, who had to refuse the wedding. The mother insisted that the hero make concessions and just take the money, and in the end, the grandfather already explained to him that this wedding was just a joke. In conditions where it was difficult to refuse, Shuniko Yuire decided to sign the papers as a sign of respect for his grandfather and his decision. Regarding the loan he has recently received, he undertakes to repay the amount in the future, and from that moment on, there will be no debt obligations between him and the creditors. He doesn't need a check because he refuses to take money from them, preferring not to cause problems with the girl. If he refuses to end the engagement, he will have no more words, but since the grandfather did not object, he decides to leave, realizing that his daughter will not be able to change his decision. Shuniko Yuire says goodbye to his grandfather, expresses his gratitude and offers to invite him to dinner next time, and the older man apologizes to the guy for his actions. Realizing that this child is a real talent, his granddaughter will inevitably feel regret about her decision. Turning around, grandfather discovers that there is no food on the table anymore. Everyone present at the dinner is amazed that the food disappeared instantly.